Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Board, Hillsborough Township Planning Board meeting of December 14th, 2023. Please join me in a salute to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be advised this meeting has been duly advertised according to Section 5 of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, otherwise known as the Sunshine Law. Notice of the 2023 annual meeting schedule and amended meeting dates have been provided to the officially designated newspapers, the Township Clerk, posted on the Township's website, and available here at the Hillsborough Township Municipal Complex. In addition, application documents have been made available on the Township's Civic Clerk website, and complete application files are available for review in the Planning and Zoning Departments in accordance with the public meeting notice. And with that, may I have a roll call of board members and also board and township professionals, please?
Mr. Doko and Mr. Wagner are absent. Mr. Peason?
He's going to be out.
Also absent.
Yeah, he called me on the right end.
Mr. Scobo?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Radowitz?
Here.
Committeeman Chigarelli?
Here.
Mayor Lapani?
Present.
Vice Chair Julian?
Here.
Chair Sirachi?
Here.
Mr. Boyce?
Here.
Mr. Bernstein?
Here.
Mr. Mayhew?
Here.
And myself and the videographer are here.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So we have a few things to get through before we get to the application, or the first application. We have a few meeting minutes for approval. First up is the May 4th, 2023 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, the eligible members are Ms. Smith, Mr. Radowitz, Committeeman Chigarelli, yourself, the mayor, and the vice chair.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Any comments from the dais? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Radowitz?
Yes.
Committeeman Chigarelli?
Yes.
Mayor Lapani?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair Sirachi?
Yes. Next, meeting minutes of June 1st of 2023. May I have a motion to approve? Well, first, who's eligible, sorry?
Mr. Scobo, everybody on the dais.
Here we go.
I'll make the motion. Second.
Okay, any comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Scobo?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Radowitz?
Yes.
Committeeman Chigarelli?
Yes.
Mayor Lapani?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair Sirachi?
Yes. And last, meeting minutes of November 2nd, 2023. Who's eligible, please?
Same group.
Same group, everybody is, so may I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Scobo?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Radowitz?
Yes.
Committeeman Chigarelli?
Yes.
Mayor Lapani?
I abstain because I was not in the Severino section.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair Sirachi?
Yes. Next up, we have a couple of resolutions for consideration. First up is the Royce Brook Golf LLC with a file number of 23-PB-04-RES. May I have a motion, or who's eligible?
Eligible members are Ms. Smith, Mr. Radowitz, the mayor, and yourself.
Okay. Core 4. All right.
Yeah.
May I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, any comments from the dais? Roll call, please.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Radowitz?
Yes.
Mayor Lapani?
Yes.
Chair Sirachi?
Yes. Next is a resolution recommending that the Somerset County Board of Commissioners and/or the Somerset County Planning Board undertake a regional study of truck traffic similar to which was undertaken by Middlesex County in the Southern Middlesex County Freight Movement Study. Everyone's eligible. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, any comments from the dais?
I'd like to just make a brief comment. Obviously, without this study is important in the county to look at the regional area of all areas in this county and how traffic has changed and affected not just only Hillsborough, but all the towns of Hillsborough. And I think it's a good step to follow the guidance that's been handed down in prior things from the state to look at it on a very macro scale, and I'm happy that the county would address that.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else who'd like to comment? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Scobah.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Radowitz.
Yes.
Committeeman Chicarelli.
Yes.
Mayor Lapani.
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian.
Yes.
Chair Sirachi.
Yes. Now we have some planning board business. First is 1170 Millstone LLC, file number 22-PB-09-MSPV. It's an extension for time of decision provided through March 1st of 2024,
You motion to accept?
the extension.
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, any comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Scobah.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Radowitz.
Yes.
Mayor Lapani.
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian.
Yes.
Chair Sirachi.
Yes, next we have Homestead
Let the record
270.
reflect that it's an abstention from recusing for Committeeman Chicarelli.
Okay. So next we have Homestead 279 LLC, file number 22-PB-05-S/MSPV with a time of decision of January 31st, 2024, and there's a note to address for next year's scheduling. So, Mr. Coyce?
Mr. Chairman, we request that you carry this matter to later in the evening, and we can further discuss it.
Okay. We will hold on to this. Okay. And next, Hillsborough 206 Holdings LLC file with a file number of 18-PB-07-MSPV. So 2019 amended site plan. And it was an update to the board as the issuance of temporary COs and COs for buildings 1 to 14, the phasing of Building A and Building B, and plans for the finished green space at the Building C site.
Mr. Chairman, this is a notice that the applicant indicated they would provide relative to the ongoing discussions they have had with this board as to the completion of this application. This letter is nothing more than informational in nature.
Okay. Mr. Coyce, anything to add?
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing to add.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So do we have to formally accept, or is this just, okay? Nothing there. Okay, and final, so there's two things here. Next is Petrox Liquor, Inc., with a file number of 23-PB-19-MSPV, Block 163.22, Lot 34.01, commonly known as 419 Amwell Road. And the applicant's requesting a waiver for the requirements of a concept review to allow for the submission of preliminary and final major site plan application with C-bulk variances and waivers to construct a 480-square-foot addition to the existing building on property located in TC, otherwise known as the Town Center District, and within the ASD, which is the Architectural and Site Design Overlay District. Mr. Coyce?
I believe.
Okay.
I'm going to recuse myself from this conversation.
Okay, thank you,
I
Mayor.
believe a representative from, feel free if you'd like to have a seat or if you'd like to speak at the mic. It's up to you.
Great. Take a seat. Good evening. Amanda Curley from Dade Pitney on behalf of Petrox Liquors. Petrox, I'm sure everyone is aware of what it is.
You might want to move the mic closer.
Mic closer?
Yes.
I'm very loud. Do we want to amplify further? Okay.
Yes, but more for the edification of others than,
So Petrox is a Hillsborough staple. It's located at 419 Amwell Road, Lot 34.01 in Block 163.22. It is a liquor store and a bar and grill. We are seeking to put a very modest expansion. It's 480 square feet at the rear of the building on existing concrete. As noted, it's located in the TZ zone, which requires, under the supplementary regulations, under procedure, that they apply with a conceptual plan and then appear before this board. We're seeking a waiver for that. If you read the TZ zone standards, it's really meant for large-scale plant development and mixed uses. That's the point of the concept plan for you guys to review and comment. This is very minor. It's 480 square feet. It's not going to change anything. The site's going to remain the same. It's going to be storage for the liquor store. There's no change in the parking. I think it's one space extra, maybe two, but we have ample parking. So we're just really seeking a waiver so we can proceed before this board and come back for the hearing. I will not be here for that. Mr. Ogrodnik will come back, but that is the extent of relief we are requesting. I have our engineer for Van Cleef here if you'd like to hear from him. It's really up to you, or if you would like to just ask some questions, I'm also happy to answer.
Okay. Just real quick, is there any change to the front of the building?
No,
Any design changes in that aspect? So, okay.
no, just this little tiny rear addition for storage.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest we hear the engineer's testimony just for the purposes of the record.
Okay.
Great, let me bring him up.
And you'll
I'll
be
swear you in.
sworn in.
Do you swear any testimony you give tonight is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And for the record, can you state and spell your name, please?
My name is Paul Christopher, last name Christopher.
Thank you.
Can you please provide the board your background and qualifications?
Sure. I'm a licensed civil engineer. I got my license in 2019. Currently work for Van Cleef Engineering out of the Hillsborough office. I graduated from Virginia Tech with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering in 2009. I'm working in site design for over 10 years and designed numerous projects like the one before you tonight.
I asked that he be qualified.
Okay, is there any objections? Okay, hearing none, we accept. Please proceed.
Can you please just give a quick overview of what the proposal is?
Absolutely. As you've already heard, the project lot is located in the town center district off of Amwell Road. The proposed improvements include the construction of a 480-square-foot building addition at the rear of the lot. The building addition will be utilized by the liquor store for storage. The existing building also houses Petrox, but there will be no change to the restaurant. There's also a roof drain header system that is going to be installed on the west side of the building. It'll connect to the existing roof drains in the area and also discharge to the catch basin located in the westerly driveway. There'll be no parking spaces lost, no impervious cover proposed as part of this application.
Can you just confirm that it will not change site circulation, the stormwater management system, and that no site improvements are proposed really but for this 480-square-foot addition and the roof leaders?
Yes, that is correct.
And would you say that this request is reasonable given the proposed development?
Absolutely. It's very minimum improvements that will not change much.
Thank you. Any of our professionals want to? Any concerns?
Mr. Chairman, our firm has no concern with granting the waiver.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Coyce?
I have no concerns. I just wanted to put a note that the way the zoning reads, it doesn't really seem to anticipate improvements being made to existing buildings. A lot of the focus, as the planning board knows, in that district, it anticipates the town center to be constructed, and there's really very little reference to existing buildings. So this is one of those technical requirements that's in the ordinance that we needed to bring to the attention of the applicant and to the board.
Okay. And you find the request reasonable?
I find it reasonable.
Thank you. Ms. Bernstein, or do you want to save?
Nothing?
Okay. Board members, anyone?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. What is in the current location?
It is a compressor for boxes.
And will that be relocated somewhere on site?
Yes, it will be relocated to the north edge of the parking lot where there's currently no spaces.
So it won't reduce the spaces?
No, there will be no reduction in parking spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board members? Okay. Do we need to open this to public? Yep, I'm getting the nod. Okay, may I have a motion to open to public?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's truly seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and also, let the record reflect that Mr. Wagner arrived at 7:23. Okay, so if anyone from the public would like to question the witness on the testimony, please come up to the mic. Okay, no takers. May I have a motion to close?
I'll make that motion to close.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So,
Any last words from council?
I think we're good, but thank you.
okay, thank you.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, the request here is simply for a waiver to the TC requirement for a concept plan. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Coyce.
Correct.
And that is what the board is voting on this evening. The board is not voting on the application. There is no application currently before the board, so the purpose of the record is this is to waive the requirement under the TC district for concept plan.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to approve the waiver of the concept plan review?
Second.
Now, who made the motion?
Oh, I'll make the motion.
I was asking.
I thought
can't make
I heard him
motions.
say. Sorry.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Scobo.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Radowitz.
Yes.
Committeeman Chicarelli.
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian.
Yes.
Chair Sirachi.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Okay, and Mr. Coyce, we're doing the assessment review?
Yes.
Because it's kind of faded, so I wasn't sure if that was a, was
Yeah, I'm
an
not
option
exactly
or
sure
not.
why it printed that way.
Okay.
We can move to that, Mr. Chairman, if you would like
I
to.
think-
Let the record reflect, Mr. Chairman, that the mayor has resumed his
As
spot
per-
on the dais.
There you go. Welcome back, Mayor. Okay, next up is a public hearing to review and adopt the 2023 Climate Change-Related Hazard Vulnerability Assessment of the Master Plan Land Use Element. And that was a mouthful, so Mr. Coyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the public hearing to review and adopt the climate change-related hazard vulnerability assessment of the master plan land use element that analyzes current and future threats to and vulnerabilities to the municipality associated with climate change-related natural hazards, including but not limited to increased temperatures, drought, flooding, hurricanes, and sea level rise, relying on the most recent natural hazard projections and the best available science provided by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, as well as other requirements. In 2021, an amendment to the municipal land use law was signed into law, requiring any land use plan element adopted after the effective date to include a climate change-related hazard vulnerability assessment. Pursuant to the new statutory requirements, the proposed climate change-related hazard vulnerability assessment is incorporated as part of the township's land use plan element upon adoption. Unfortunately, the chairman of the master plan subcommittee, Mr. Peason, is not here this evening, so I will speak a little bit on his behalf. The master plan subcommittee had met several times to discuss this document. As I've already stated, this is a requirement from the state of New Jersey for us in order to move forward with our master planning. This was a critical document to get incorporated into our master plan. The way the document is set up, it really follows a lot of all of the requirements that the statute says. And we went through essentially each section, and I just wanted to briefly describe each, the way the document is organized as an introduction, and then it goes right into the climate change-related hazard vulnerability assessment. It's broken into 6 different sections. The first one talks about current and future climate change-related threats and vulnerability. The second is a build-out analysis that talks about vacant land that may have some environmental concerns on them. The third section is essentially an assessment or an inventory of the critical facilities and infrastructure that may be or near environmental areas or flood areas. And the next section is the impact on the master plan. Section 5 is strategies and design standards, and that section is set up to basically talk about the different things that the township has been doing on this topic, and also lays out a number of things that the township can start doing moving forward. There's a number of actions that are associated with the Sustainable Jersey Certification Program that we felt it was appropriate to put there as recommendations to the town, as there were actions that are related to vulnerability for the town overall. And then finally is the consistency and coordination with other plans. So other than the master plan, there's a number of other plans that the township is required to do, or potentially the county. Has a lot to do with operations, emergency operations, and also plans associated with the county. So that is basically a policy statement that is set up that lays out how the town going forward would make sure that those plans are also consistent with the vulnerability assessment and overall with the master plan. It also has a policy statement in there that if there is some sort of destructive event, that is also something that would require us to go back into the vulnerability assessment and take the latest data that we have and apply it. Overall, this document it's a very helpful planning exercise, but the real work doesn't really start to get done until you're actually diving into the master plan, you're going into the elements, and you're actually starting to put actual information about vulnerability, or you start to put it in there. That's really where the work gets done. And so this is just the beginning. And then as we go to the different parts of the master plan, that's where we're going to be incorporating this new approach to be making sure that we're looking at those types of things when it comes to how the town develops. When the master plan subcommittee met most recently, there were just a few very, very minor changes that I just wanted to quickly go over. In section 5 of strategies and design standards, under number 5, there was just a change in terms of the beginning of the sentence. So originally how it read, it said the township continues to meet all the requirements of NJDEP. It's just being changed to line up with the rest of the document to say continues to meet all the requirements of the NJDEP, so on and so forth. Again, very, very minor change. And number 6 of the same section, same thing. How it originally read was a study is underway, and it's just being changed to complete the study to enhance stormwater management control. The last change was actually in the appendix, and it had to do with actually putting a link to the data where all the bridges came from. And so, again, that was just a link that was put in there for the Lifeline Analysis Transportation National Bridge Inventory. And that's something that was used in looking at the built infrastructure assets. So there's a number of bridges that the township has, and that is just putting in there where if someone wanted to find out all the locations of those bridges without making this document any larger, we just put a reference in there to that. Those are the only changes that are recommended, and that came from the master plan subcommittee and also me as your licensed professional planner. I have nothing further to add if the board has any questions.
Okay, thank you. Board members.
Yeah, as a member of the Master Planning Subcommittee, I think I just want to reiterate that this is really an inventory of everything in the town. So we did post it online. David, I don't know if we received any feedback from the public from it being online or not. So we wanted to give the public an opportunity to see it and that this was coming. Again, there's not a lot in there. There's more to come from the master plan section and getting public input. This was more of an inventory and will be used, as Dave described, to guide the rest of the master plan as we move into that. So if there wasn't any feedback from the public either, I'm assuming there wasn't if you haven't made any changes. But again, I wouldn't have expected there to be a lot, because it's really just an inventory of where our critical facilities are, flooding areas, and really the facilities, emergency facilities, emergency routes. So it tracks this document tracks all of that, and we'll incorporate that into the master plan. So just want everybody to know that that's what this is. You haven't missed anything, or there will be an opportunity for contributions from the public on the overall master plan. This is a key first step in it, and now that we've gotten through this, we'll really start getting into the master plan part. So I think that the staff and team did a really good job in this, and like I said, it gives you a good inventory of where all of our facilities are: schools, OEM services, first responders. So it's really interesting to see what we have in the town and where it's located. So it's a nice document. So thank you.
Thank you. And just to further mention, this hearing was noticed pursuant to the statute requirements, and we also invited the public to attend tonight, to make comments, or to ask questions. And we also had put it out there for the public to contact me directly via email. I have not received anything, and I'm not aware that we had anyone come to the counter to look at the physical copy. But this document was posted online, so it's a little bit different times now. So this is a lot more accessible than in past years.
Thank you. And just to make clear, we do have a master plan. This is more for updates to it, to provide the guidance.
Correct.
I just don't want people to think that we didn't have a master plan.
Right.
So, just to clarify that. Okay, any further comments from the dais? Okay. Mr. Bernstein, do I have to formally open to public? Okay, I have a motion to open to public.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, if there's anyone from the public, please come to the mic, state your name and address for the record. Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you. My name is Mike Pissarro. I'm the Policy Director for the Watershed Institute. I'd like to thank the township for putting together this climate resiliency plan. For the master plan, I understand it's a roadmap, so I think it's a very good roadmap, especially the items in the design standards. I think we all need to do better, and I think towns are starting to realize that. One thing I would ask, as the township is looking at their master planning, as they're looking through other opportunities, to look to regional approaches to address flooding and extreme weather events, because as we all know, we're not going to be able to solve it one town at a time. So again, thank you, and I really commend the township for putting it together and hope you pass it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Grant Colmer, Taylor Avenue. I'll end just to reiterate the sentiment of just thank you for putting it together. Really appreciate it. Also, I will advocate just a little bit on the language, if I could. I didn't know that there was public comment. I can certainly follow up, Mr. Coyce, and that's just advocating for the Green Hills development. And I do see, and I want to thank the township, especially for holding those meetings. And I do look at the language for the other ones. They say a lot of continue, we'll evaluate. And the only note of sort of a verbiage for the Green Hills is it's what was completed. Love to see language, if there could be something, and continue to, sort of the sentiment of the same language that you're using all over the design and standards. We're going to continue to look at that and help out the neighborhood as such. That's the only thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Brooks, 7 Winding Way. I also want to commend the township for putting this together. I wanted to ask one question as it relates to the climate change hazard vulnerability, as to whether certain facilities, I know there's an inventory, Hillsborough has at least one TCPA facility, Toxic Catastrophe Prevention Act facility. These are the super dangerous. If they explode, we want to know about them and we want to prevent that from happening. And I'm not sure whether those or that one or maybe two have made it in to the inventory, because if there is a climate impact, flooding or something else to one of those facilities, we're probably not going to feel too good. There's also 1 or 2 major air polluters in the town that are listed in DEP's inventories that I would suggest that we be sure to include those also, simply because there's the potential for harm should there be a catastrophic event at those. So, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Motion to close to public.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to ask you if you wanted me to address any of those comments or suggestions.
Please do.
In terms of the Green Hills development, thank you for your comments. This document wasn't set up to reiterate things that can easily be found in reports and studies and things like that. And this was very much approached to try to make this document very, very friendly to the public to be able to look as a document. We didn't want to make this a very long document. We can add things like links to the PDFs. There is an existing study that was done that does or starting to address how the township can approach things. So we didn't add all of those, but we, again, as Committeeman Chigarelli had said, this was more of basically a inventory of the things that we're doing, and this isn't going to take the place of the things that we're going to be continuing to do as a township. And as it was also said, this really, starts the roadmap, but it's not really until we start to really get into the master plan where we could really make a difference with the different things that are being put in there. But that is something that we could certainly take a look at, and if we have access to be able to put any digital links to make it easier for the public, then that's something we will certainly do for this document. And then also as it relates to any areas that might be contaminated, the reason why that was left out in this assessment, it's because the township has already been undergoing, basically reviewing its own brownfields list. That is a Sustainable Jersey action. That is certainly something that we can add to the list in the design section 5, strategies and design standards as something that we're going to look at. But again, as we're going into the master plan, that's also something that we're going to start incorporating and actually having in there. Some of that information is constantly changing. The state has different sources on where to find that information. So that was a much more exhaustive effort that's needed to make sure that that document was going to be right. And we didn't want to slow down this process. But it's certainly something that we can add, that it's something that the township is actively working on.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Mr. Bernstein, an action for us?
The board will need to take an action to approve the study and add the element to the master plan.
Okay. So may I have a motion with what Mr. Bernstein just said?
I'll make that motion. Thank you, Mr. Bernstein.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner. Yes. Mr. Scobell.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Radowitz. Yes. Committeeman Chigarelli.
Yes.
Mayor Lapani.
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian.
Yes.
Chair Saraji.
Yes. And before we leave this part of the planning board business, I would be remiss, didn't state it earlier, but this evening is Mr. Julian, the vice chair's last meeting with the planning board. His term is up. He's decided to pursue other activities. I don't know what else is there to do on a Thursday night, but but more importantly, I just want to thank him for his service, not only for here, but as you know, the seat he resides in also doubles as a seat on the Environmental Commission. So he's been a liaison to that. So he hears it all, and twice. So just want to thank you for that, and obviously, representing the Environmental Commission's concerns here too, and bringing that to our attention. And you're going to be sorely missed.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's with mixed emotions. It's been many, many years since I've been serving the township, and it's my mom, my past moms served, and I remember she always told me, she said, you live in a town, and it's just important to give something back, and hopefully I've done that over all the years, and I will definitely miss everybody, but yeah, I think it's time that I just find some other stuff to do also. Yeah. But I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate serving with all the professionals and what I would call friends at this point. So thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Do you want to do a recess now, Mr. Bernstein? I know you had requested before we move to applications.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask for a recess.
Okay. I don't have to go to a vote. I get to decide, right?
No.
What?
No.
No? Okay. So we're going to...
15 minutes.
15 minutes? Okay, so we will come back and reconvene about 8 o'clock according to the clock on the dais. It's 8 o'clock. We are back in session. Where we left off, there were no consideration of ordinances, so now we're moving from business from the floor for items that are not on this evening's agenda. So if there's anyone that would like, please come up, state your name and address for the record, and please keep comments no more than 5 minutes, and also nothing directly or indirectly related to warehouses.
Brilliant. My name is Suzanne Oxy, OCHSE, 425 Willow Road, and that's in the Belmead section of town. I have 3 items that I wanted to address. The first 2 are thank yous for the quality of life decisions that the town made for the Willow Road weight restriction for trucks, and also for the warehouse ordinance. So thank you very much for that. The third thing is I'm here about is Block 201, Lot 7.01, which is at the intersection of Willow and Homestead Road. It's the former, I don't know if it's former, Vitamin Factory. And before that, it was the Board of Ed. Before that, it was Nichols Engineering. It's got quite a history. I have a map of that site that I'd like to present to you. And in August 13th, 2022, I sent correspondence to the township about that property, requesting that it be evaluated for rezoning or reconsideration of the current zone, which is TECO. That property, and I'm going to read an excerpt of the letter that I sent. This property is adjacent to preserved farmland on 2 sides, to the south and west. Across the street to the east, the zoning is residential. To the north is the Willow Road Park, formerly ball fields, now a Frisbee park, soon to be maybe a dog park. Running through that property are two significant waterways that flow into Royce Brook. These lands are all on Hillsborough's Greenways map. During significant and more frequent rain events, the roadway along this property on Willow and Homestead is flooded. So my question is, next steps, is that something that can be addressed by the planning board, possibly in the master plan review, looking at this property? And if you look at a map, it's really not appropriate for that particular zone. Help. Thoughts?
Royce, you want to just go through the process, review what the process is?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this sort of request is certainly something that can be incorporated into the master plan in terms of, as we're going to be taking our next steps to update the master plan land use element. And for some of you who may not realize, but that's the basis for the zoning, the justification, everything. It's one of the most important, if not the most important element of all the elements in the master plan. And that is going to be the next thing that we're going to be looking at. And that is the sort of thing that we would start to focus on in terms of, is the current zoning in the different areas throughout the township, are they appropriate for whatever they may be? And that's a process that's going to take some time. We haven't released any timelines as of yet. The focus was to really get the vulnerability assessment done, and then for 2024 to be the year that we make an announcement to the public in terms of going into the master plan.
So can you assure me that this is on your radar?
What I can tell you is I have your letter. I've spoken to you personally about it. I hear you now. And as we have these different things that come to us, it's certainly those are things that we're, and again, part of the process is also opening everything up to the stakeholders, to the public, and that's also where we'll be getting comments like this. And so certainly feel free to bring it up again, but I can assure you that I'm already aware of your request, and we're going to be getting a number of requests, I'm sure, from other stakeholders, and that's going to be that is part of the master plan process, is to hear from the community and for the planning board to evaluate and see what is appropriate. And we would then take those next steps. In the future, it would be the planning board adopting a new master plan land use plan element. And then after that, it would be the township committee then putting that into action in the form of a zoning ordinance amendments and things like that. So it certainly is a process.
And what is the time frame for all of that?
We don't have an exact time frame at the moment, but it is something that we're working on announcing in the near future.
So when should I nudge you again?
So I'll just answer, this is probably going to take most of the year to get done at best. By the time we have all the meetings and the zoning and then have to go through the approval process and then the public information and then go to the township committee. So it's at best, late summer or fall. Okay. So I'll ask you, since you've brought up, what is it, in your opinion, would be the proper zoning for this?
I'd love to see it agriculture. There's ag around it. There is waterways there. There's a steep slope. I don't know if you've ever gone down that hill.
I'm aware of all the way back to when it was Nichols.
Okay. So it's a lovely piece of property. There are wells on there, monitoring wells because of the Nichols issue. I'm not sure it could be, I'd love to see it, agriculture.
My understanding is that there is groundwater contamination on the property. But again, part of this is putting all that information together and then also looking at any of the unique environmental features that are nearby and the streams and looking at all the other things. So it's all going to be part of the process.
Now it's, looks like it's a place that people dump old couches and things like that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public that would like to comment to the board on matters not on this evening's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move now to public hearing of applications. First one, this should be fairly quick because we're just talking about rescheduling. This is 303 Amwell Road with file number 21-PB-17-MSPV with time of decision of March 1st, 2024. Otherwise, well, it's not otherwise known as 303 Amwell Road. They were very creative with the name here. So the application scheduled to address a rescheduling date, which will be determined by the board, and the extension of time is provided through March 1st of next year. So, Mr. Coyce, are we looking at the calendar?
Yes. Yes, we are looking at the calendar, but as you had said, this was mostly to announce the extension of time that was provided. And we will be sure, as we're penciling in and soon to be officially scheduling applications, we're going to keep that in mind, that if it needs to, be put on an agenda close to that date. So we'll keep an eye on it and report back to the planning board.
Okay. Mr. Bernstein?
I would
You're ready to lean in.
simply suggest we give it the second meeting in February date for penciling it in, and depending on where it is, it can always be moved again, but as we start penciling stuff in, things need to, so that's my suggestion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Of course, do we have time, do we have an opening on that agenda?
We currently have Weston Road on February 1st.
I'm looking
About
at
the
the
8th?
the 2nd, the 8th.
The 8th is open.
Okay. So do we need to
It's
take
a motion to carry this matter, 303 Amwell Road LLC, without further notice until Thursday, February the 8th, 2024 at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard, and the approval of extension of time through March 1, 2024. Obviously, if other things occur, it may not be an issue.
Okay. So may I have a motion?
And I would ask that Mr. Ciccarelli abstains.
Yes. Okay, do I have a motion for the extension to February 8th?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Pizza? Sorry, Mr. Scopo?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Radowitz?
Yes.
Committeeman Ciccarelli?
Abstain.
Abstain.
Mayor Laponi?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair Sirachi?
Yes.
Who was the second on that? Thank you.
Okay, moving on now to the main event. Homestead Road LLC, file number 21-PB-25-MS/MSPV, with a time of decision to the end of this year, otherwise commonly known as 203 Homestead Road and 189 Homestead Road. And the application was continued from our September 14th date without further notice. Okay, Mr. Bernstein, did you want to?
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that the parties please place the objectors and counsel for the applicant, their appearances on the record, and then I have some inquiries of Mr. Giannetti.
Okay.
Yes. Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Craig Giannetti of the law firm Dave Pitney on behalf of the applicant Homestead Road LLC.
Good evening. Mike Pissarro, Policy Director for the Watershed Institute, Objector number 1.
Good evening. Brian Tarantino, representing SWAT.
Your objective number 3.
And objector number 3. So I know, I'll just tell you.
Tarantino,
I'm sorry?
before you even start, don't even. So we're going to start this in an orderly fashion. For a couple of other items for the record, Mr. Chairman, the board did receive today emails from objector number 2, Mr. Gross, and objector number 4, Mr. Lanahan, that both of them will be unavailable this evening due to unexpected family emergencies out of state. We have no material received from objector number 5, Ms. Sandler, as to her appearance or non-appearance this evening. Mr. Chairman, for the purposes of the record, my office received this afternoon 2 different sets of documents that we received from Mr. Coyce, who received these documents from a member of the public. Mr. Giannetti, who is Enhanced Acquisitions LLC?
Enhanced Acquisitions is affiliate of the applicant.
Are they the party who has the agreement between themselves and the Shockleys for 189 Homestead Road?
I'd have to check to see what the entity is that's the actual contract purchaser.
Mr. Chairman, we received from a member of the public some court documents that my office has reviewed in regard to a lawsuit brought by Enhanced Acquisitions LLC against the Shockleys related to a purchase contract for the property at 189 Homestead Road, which seems to indicate a desire by the owner of the property to withdraw from any contract he and or she may have with the plaintiff. We have also received copies of documents. There was a motion for an order to show cause to prevent such from occurring. Judge Sue denied that order to show cause. There is also a letter in the file from plaintiff's counsel that supposedly there is a resolution of this matter. We also received additional material later this afternoon from the same member of the public through Mr. Coyce about a second lawsuit involving this property, not between Enhanced Acquisitions, but from Woodland Industrial Development and the Shockleys, which is currently pending in Essex County Court related to the same property, the sale and acquisition thereof. Mr. Giannetti, can you enlighten, to the extent you know, what the status of all of these litigations are regarding your client's property ownership as to 189 Homestead?
So I do not know either litigation that you're referring to. I haven't seen any of these documents that you said were submitted to the board this afternoon.
They haven't been submitted, just for the purpose of the record. The board has not seen these documents.
Okay.
My office has seen these documents through Mr. Coyce's office from a member of the public. So I want you to be aware that nobody on the dais has seen these documents. I have not
Okay.
passed them along because obviously I wanted to hear what you had to say before we.
So again, and for the record, I have not seen the documents that you're referencing, and I can't really speak to them without seeing them and understanding what the nature of it is. I'm not aware of a pending litigation or a litigation, did you say Woodland?
Woodmont Industrial
Woodmont.
Partners, which is a lawsuit in Essex County that apparently was filed back in '21. Mr. Chairman, as long as Mr. Giannetti agrees to give me back these copies, I will get him his own clean set, but I will be happy to provide to him these documents, and again, just received. I would suggest at this point, Mr. Giannetti, it might make sense for you to have a conversation with your client after you've reviewed them. You want to take a break?
Well, I guess Can I understand the purpose and the relevance?
The issue is standing relative to whether or not your client actually has standing relative to a part of this application with 189 Homestead. There is an owner of the property. Your client, we understand, is a contract purchaser for the property. If your client is not, in fact, the contract purchaser of this property, your client does not necessarily have standing to bring this application. That's the issue.
And you're claiming that this litigation is what? Claiming that he's not the contract purchaser?
Apparently, that the plaintiff, who may be your client, is suing the Shockleys for trying to get out of the contract to sell the property to them. So I'm only reading what's apparently in the public record in the court, so.
But even in that case, you're saying there's a lawsuit for a seller for attempting to get out of the contract?
No, there is a lawsuit by a purchaser as to the seller trying to get out of the contract to sell the property to the purchaser, who we believe is the applicant in this matter.
The purchaser suing the seller for trying to get out of the contract I'm just not following.
There is apparently a contract purchase to sell 189 Homestead Road from the Shockleys to, I believe, is your client, which is the second litigation. The first litigation regards a prior attempt by the Shockleys to sell to another applicant, which is then related to your client. Apparently, there is an option in the agreement, and I'm only basing this on what I read. I've not seen the paperwork. There is an option purportedly in the agreement for the Shockleys to terminate the contract after a certain period of time, which they apparently may or may not have exercised to do so. And there was a litigation that followed regarding trying to prevent them from exercising it. There's also some discussion in there about a so-called resolution. That's what I know.
Again, I'm not familiar with it, but so far I haven't heard anything saying that they're not the contract purchaser of the property.
Well, I would suggest you take a look at the paperwork and discuss it with your client, and then if you'd like to come back and tell me I'm wrong, that's fine.
Sure.
Okay, we'll take a recess.
Yeah, take another recess.
All right, we're back in session. Mr. Giannetti?
Sure. So I guess initially, you said a member of the public. Can you identify who the member of the public was that submitted this to Mr. Coyce?
Yep.
Mr. Brook?
Who's Mr. Brook? Mr.
David.
You have a first name?
Mr. David Brook?
And I think if I was provided these documents in advance of the meeting or even at the beginning of the meeting, there probably wouldn't have been a need for a recess. And the seller of the property is here. I spoke with him. He said these are resolved and the contract is in effect. So there's been no change to the contract. As for the Woodmont property, or the Woodmont Industrial Partners, I'm not aware of it, but just looking at it, it's for a breach of a LOI and seeking damages. It has nothing to do with the effectiveness of the contract. So we're ready to proceed.
Okay.
I would ask Mr. Giannetti that in light of the letter that I believe is from plaintiff's counsel on the 30th of November, that somebody from that office please provide to provide to the board prior to the next hearing exactly what the resolution was, which is referred to in the letter. There's a letter to the court.
I'm not sure what the relevance is. There's a contract.
With all due respect.
If it's an order or something like that showing that it's
Apparently,
resolved?
there was a complaint registered. There is supposedly a resolution. It is a pending litigation between the parties. It has not been dismissed by the parties as far as my review of e-courts as of today. So for the purposes of the record, if your representation is that your client and the owner have resolved this issue, we'd like it for the record on the issue of standing.
Can you provide me a copy of that letter? Is
What?
that in here?
It's in there. It's a letter from plaintiff's counsel dated, I believe, the 29th of November. Was it the front?
I see. We'll provide that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, are those our copies or are those yours?
Mine, I'll get them to you.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, before we begin, I need to recuse myself from this matter.
All right. That's it. We'll see you next year. Okay, anyone else needs to recuse themselves? Okay.
With
Okay.
that, Mr. Chairman, I think Mr. Giannetti can proceed based on that representation by council, subject to a review of whatever is received.
Sure. I guess from a housekeeping matter, I know since the last meeting, there's kind of been a number of letters on various topics with respect to the stream corridor ordinance and the freshwater wetlands. I know Mr. Bernstein, as was directed, the parties submitted their letters. He submitted his opinion. Tonight, witnesses-wise, we have our traffic engineer. Recall, we presented the direct testimony of Mr. Dean, and he's now up again for board questioning, board professional questioning, and then objector cross-examination. After that, we have Ed Cook, our environmental and wetlands expert, to talk more about the wetlands on the property, particularly the drainage ditch, as well as the stream corridor ordinance. And with that, unless there's any questions of me, I'd like to bring up Mr. Dean to finish his testimony.
If I may, 2 points. One, I do think it would be prudent if the board would make a ruling on the stream corridor ordinance, because that truly affects the application completely. And then second, Mr. Cook, the environmental resource inventory, I would object to his testimony on the wetlands and/or stream corridor in that that report at best has hints of discussions, not any details, any meat on those issues. And therefore, as that was not provided 10 days before this hearing, I would object to any testimony on that regards.
Here's 2 things. One, I don't think there's any need for the board to render a decision now. We have additional testimony to provide from Mr. Cook, as well as our planner who will be addressing it as well. It's our position that it's not applicable for various reasons, and notwithstanding if the board is going to find that it's applicable, we're entitled to a waiver. So we're going to be presenting testimony in the record, so I don't see why the board would make a decision now before it hears all the testimony. As to Mr. Cook, he was involved with the LOI, that was the application that was submitted to the DEP that this board also received. He was involved with the LOI that was issued by the DEP, and he has every right to testify as to that subject. I'm not sure under what basis you would preclude him to testify.
Mr. Tarantino want to add, I'm sure?
Yeah, the only thing I would point out is that I'm not sure why there would need to be additional testimony about the stream corridor. Mr. Bernstein, you already requested parties to submit their rationale and their explanation, and that's been done. And then you've reviewed those and rendered your opinion. So I don't know why this would then, we would continue to have testimony to further deliberate about this issue. It would seem like it would be important to render an opinion about it, or if the applicant intends to make an adjustment to their plan so that it's conforming, then great, we'd like to see that. But the answer that, well, we need more testimony doesn't seem to be the appropriate answer.
I would like to respond initially. the main focus of the Bernstein letter was the preemption issue of the wetlands, Freshwater Wetlands Act to the Stream Corridor Ordinance. Mr. Cook is going to testify as to that, but even more so beyond that as to the applicability and the need for the Stream Corridor buffer and the terms within the ordinance. In addition, he's going to be laying the foundation for our planner to testify as to the waiver from the Stream Corridor Ordinance if the board eventually decides that is applicable. So I have every right to present this witness and lay the foundation for my planner.
Again, if Mr. Cook, as Mr. Giannetti just indicated, was going to talk about the values and validity of buffers, that is wholly absent from his report. There is no basis.
He submitted a letter.
Finish.
It's wholly absent from his report. I don't remember seeing it in any previous letter. If it is there, then that is my mistake. But this board, as I was reminded, had a rule of having all expert reports 10 days ahead of time. And if the nature of his testimony is the value and justification of buffers, whether it's 50 feet, 150 feet, the public has a right to have that information ahead of time and to prepare.
So initially, the reports had to be in 10 days prior with respect to planners. Civil engineer didn't submit a report, he's allowed to testify as to his plans. The architect didn't submit a report, he's allowed to testify as to his plans. Mr. Cook was involved in the wetlands delineation, as well as the LOI that was issued and the plans that were stamped by the DEP, and he has every right to testify as to those. There's no preclusion because he didn't submit a report. And in addition, in my September, whether it was 22nd or 23rd, response on this issue as was directed, there was a letter from Mr. Cook as well addressing some of the topics he'll be testifying to.
Mr. Bernstein, some guidance here.
Well, I'm always concerned that I went to law school to get a law degree to find out that others who don't can provide legal advice. It's always been a comforting thought for 40-plus years of doing that. To the extent Mr. Cook is providing to provide legal interpretation of the Freshland Waterlands Application Act, I have some severe questions as to that, but I think we'll get to that at the appropriate time if Mr. Cook is being called for purposes of explaining what he provided to the DEP in terms of the applicant's application for the issue at hand. I think that he may be able to do so long as at some point somebody is going to provide this board with the backup relative to same in order to understand how that what was provided and how that came about for purposes of Mr. Mayu reviewing and others, et cetera. In terms of the underlying request from objectors that the board make a decision basically to accept my opinion letter and therefore, without saying it directly, bring this hearing to a close, I am frankly of the opinion, Mr. Chairman, right, wrong, or indifferent, that I think the board needs to hear the application in total. I anticipate significant issues when we get to the end, whether it's following my opinion and that of Mr. Mayu, taking into account potential waivers or related issues, what may or may not be a decision of the board, et cetera. And I would suggest to the applicant that they give consideration as we move this process along to allowing the board to ultimately make those determinations when we get to the end versus trying to force the board into making a decision 30 seconds after all the testimony is in from everybody, including the public. So I'm advising you, Mr. Giannetti, now for you and your client to consider that as we move forward, because obviously this case isn't going to get finished tonight and isn't going to get finished probably in January or any time in the foreseeable near future. But for the purposes, Mr. Chairman, of moving along from Mr. Dean's testimony, because we all enjoy having Mr. Dean here in the holiday season, for Mr. Dean to complete his testimony, and then we will cross the next bridge when we get to the next bridge, which is Mr. Cook.
I concur. So, Mr. Dean.
Thank you. This time I call Gary Dean.
And we'll re-swear you in.
Good evening. You swear any testimony you give tonight is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And for the record, can you state and spell your name?
Gary Dean, D-E-A-N, traffic consultant for the applicant.
Mr. Dean, so we can move this along, have your qualifications or any of your licenses come into difference since your last appearance before the board?
They have not, Mr. Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Mr. Giannetti?
Sure, and I guess for housekeeping matters, on the direct testimony, Mr. Dean, at the last hearing, part of it, he referred to a hard data traffic studies, traffic count comparison to other existing warehouse facilities within New Jersey. One of the board members requested that that document be provided. We did submit it to the board well in advance of the 10 days, and I guess we'd like to have that marked as an exhibit. He's already testified to it and what it was. I know it's on Civic Clerk, but I guess officially marking it for the record. And I think that would be A9. And I guess we can call it warehouse trip generation comparison.
What's the date of that?
It is undated.
So I guess at this point, I'd open it to, I don't have any further direct examination beyond what was testified to at the last meeting. If any of the board professionals or board members have any questions for Mr. Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dean, a few meetings ago, our office expressed concern with the scale of the truck turning plans and being able to tell whether wheels were encroaching off the edge of pavement. Subsequent to that concern, 60-foot scale drawings have been submitted, but our office is still having a hard time telling if the truck wheels are staying on the pavement. Would you agree to submit to our office a larger scale truck turning plan, maybe 30 or 40 scale?
I did not prepare that drawing, so I cannot, I'll defer to Mr. Giannetti, but if that's something you need in your evaluation, we can certainly, I believe we can provide that through Mr. Ford. The caveat being, and I don't know whether this opens up Mr. Ford again to another night of testimony to attest to whatever amendment to this exhibit is necessary.
I don't believe so, so long as it was, you testified previously, was prepared in consultation with you, and you testified to it as to the last meeting. If it all it is just submitting it at a larger scale. I'm sorry, what you said, what, a 30 scale?
Yes, I'd hate to keep guessing at what scale will provide enough clarity, so I'm thinking 30 scale would probably work.
Okay.
Thank you. And I apologize if these questions need to be directed to Mr. Ford. I understand he prepared the plan, but I think, Mr. Dean, you were testifying about the plan. That's why I'm directing them to you. On that plan, there were certain turning movements provided for trucks entering and exiting. I did not see a template for a truck to exit the driveways turning eastbound from warehouse number 2. Mr. Giannetti, would you be able to agree to add that template, turning template to the plan?
I would ask first, Mr. Dean, if you thought it was relevant to the analysis.
I think in light of the new ordinance that prohibits trucks on Willow, that movement is no longer applicable.
That's a great point. I was going to get to that about Willow Road, but there's 2 warehouses, so will trucks move from warehouse 2 to warehouse 1? And
I can't see that as being a likely scenario. But if that's something that's requested to put this issue to bed, I'm sure Mr. Ford can provide that.
Thank you.
Can you just clarify again, truck turning east
from warehouse 2 to warehouse
2?
1. Yes, sir.
In our prior review letter, we talked about widening the half width of Homestead Road to 18 foot wide. Maybe I'm missing it, but our office still has not seen a detailed plan showing that width or any road cross-section information. Am I missing that?
Again, I am not the site engineer, so I apologize. I'm going to have to defer these questions to Mr. Ford.
And I would ask that you reach out to Mr. Ford directly, because every time we review that comment, he said he's provided it to you, so.
Yeah.
Do we have a current plan, Craig, that we can display?
Can we
I don't
just,
know if
on
it
the
was-
record, state that you agree that your applicant, with Mr. Ford or someone from your team, will submit plans showing the half-width widening and a cross-section showing the pavement thickness design for the widening?
Yeah, we'll, I would suggest tomorrow if you could reach out to Mr. Ford, and, because I don't want to misstate what you're looking for, but every time I ask, the answer is it's been provided.
Again, going back to turning movements, I didn't see an eastbound truck turning into Warehouse 2. Can we agree that that would be also added to the turning template?
Certainly.
Our office has a concern with some of the trucks staying on the pavement as they turn in and out of these driveways. Now, maybe the 30-scale plan will address it, but at this point, our office believes that there should be widening on the far side of the road at the entrances to the 4 driveways. Our recommendation is to widen it to the same 18-foot half width for 200 feet approaching and exiting each driveway. And so I'm looking to see if your applicant is willing to make that.
Yeah, if I'm understanding correctly, you're asking for improvements on the opposite side of the road across the neighboring property. Irrespective of whether the templates work or not, that's just additional widening you're seeking, essentially a shoulder.
Correct. Considering that there'll be trucks at times waiting to make left-hand turns into the driveways.
What we can do is we can evaluate the warrants for that, and it's a function of the approaching volume, or should I say the opposing volume of the trucks. That would be beyond the applicant's frontage in that it's the opposite side of the road, but we will take that comment under advisement and report back.
Thank you. I think you might have touched upon this. I couldn't tell from your traffic study, are you routing all the trucks west to 206?
Yes, we are.
And you would agree, as part of the application, to put signage at the driveways directing the trucks to westward?
Yes, we would.
And maybe, Mr. Dean, we've already jumped on this next one. With our concern about trucks waiting to make left-hand turns into the driveways, would you be willing to provide a left turn lane warrant analysis?
We would do that, yes. I just for identification, we are projecting levels of service A for all of the driveway movements at full build-out. And to refresh the board's recollection, that is the highest level of service with minimal, if any, delay. So from an operational perspective, we don't see the need for that, but we will certainly provide the quantitative analyses in support of that opinion.
Thank you. Moving westward to Route 206, takes trucks over a DOT bridge that goes over the railroad tracks. Have you done any analysis or have you received any communication from the DOT of the capacity of that bridge?
We've not asked DOT because trucks currently use Homestead Road. I can only logically surmise that it has been appropriately designed and is rated to carry weighted vehicles such as school buses, other delivery vehicles, and the like, but I don't know how to verify that independently.
Well, do you know the capacity or weight?
I know there are no restrictions on it. So again, without there being a restriction, the logical assumption is it is H20 rated for 80,000 GVW vehicles. Yeah, I have a copy.
In your past testimony, we hear a lot of information about truck trips during the AM and PM peak hours. Do I miss it in the report, or have you somewhere in the report documented the total daily truck trips?
No, I have not.
Can you add that to the report?
We can, sure.
Thank you.
Let me rephrase. I will provide you with that information. I don't intend to amend our report, but I can provide that daily traffic number.
Unlike an office building or school, which have some well-defined peak trip periods, is there any reason the reported AM and PM truck trips could not occur during all operating periods? Meaning, whatever the peak truck trips reported for the AM and PM, could that be reoccurring every hour?
Well, they're called peak hours for a reason, but if the focus is on the hourly fluctuation of truck trips, I don't know that that has been documented by ITE and the standard methods to evaluate truck volumes, and I will have to research that, but I don't have that answer offhand.
And just to be clear, and Mr. Dean noted he wouldn't amend his report as to the total truck traffic. He did address this in his May 9th, 2023 letter to the board, where I guess he noted, I think you projected 160 or approximately 160 trucks per day, and he noted you generally have correctly calculated it, and then also factored in approximately 30 trucks per in the hour morning, and then the hour and estimated daily volume around the same.
Are these trips that our office is stating, or what I want to get is Mr. Dean's opinion of the trips?
Well, he provided it in his letter.
And the date on that letter is?
May 9th, 2023.
That we concurred with your office's calculation of 160 trucks per day.
Which would be 320
Trips, correct. They come in, they leave, but that's correct.
You also stated that it would total daily volume of 200 to 300 trucks per day. So it's more than 160, right?
I'm just referring to the May 9th letter.
So am I.
Do we have two different letters?
No, you're referring down here.
Ah, I see, I'm sorry.
So we're in that neighborhood.
No, that pertains to existing truck activity on Homestead Road, not what comes from the site. The current traffic counts show approximately 30 trucks per hour in the morning. Afternoon trucks were lower at 15. Over the course of a full day, we would estimate a total daily volume of 200 to 300 trucks. That's current, that's per day on Homestead Road.
existing.
That's existing, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dean, we were talking about ITE and peak periods. And is it possible that the warehouse peak truck generation period could occur outside the 7 to 8 a.m. or the 4:45 to 5:45 p.m. analysis period?
It is conceivable, yes.
In your report, did you include the projected truck traffic that may also use the 202 Homestead Road intersection? There is currently a proposed 117,000 square foot warehouse at 279 Homestead Road. Did you include those projected trips?
And I forget the different numbers. Is that the ShopRite property?
No, this is across the street behind an existing.
Yeah, we included that. We're the traffic consultant for that applicant.
Well, you jumped to my next question. Did you include the proposed 170,000 square foot warehouse at the corner of 206 and Homestead, you, as you're referring to, and some people refer to as the ShopRite potential site?
We did not. That application was filed after this one.
Would you be willing to take a look in the analysis of Route 206 and your conclusions based on the additional potential flow from that 170,000 square foot warehouse?
I would submit it's that applicant's responsibility to do that. I suspect it's already in their study in that we shared our information with them. I don't know the status of that application other than I know there's some litigation pending in that I don't believe this board has deemed that application complete. So from a procedural perspective, that application doesn't exist.
You mentioned on your May 9th letter about current truckloads on the roadway. Can you tell us how many of those trucks are actually WB50 or above vehicles?
I thought I testified to that, so forgive me because I have a lot of different notes. And was that on the peak hour basis or daily basis?
Daily.
I don't think I have that with me right at the moment.
Is that something you can supply?
Yes.
Our office
Yes.
later? Just to clarify, all I can recall, and of course I haven't been here to every meeting, but I recall you testifying that your truck numbers include UPS box trucks and so forth. And
Not UPS trucks, but yes, trucks, heavy vehicles that are above and beyond UPS trucks. And we did it, we photographed every truck over 24 hours for several days.
okay, so what our office is looking for is the number of WB50 and above
Understood.
vehicles. Thank you.
We will furnish you with that.
How did you determine the non-truck trips, the personal vehicles, distribution coming and leaving the two warehouses?
Our traffic study evaluated the likely travel paths to the regional highway system. We looked at the current patterns of traffic, which provide some indication as to arrival and departure routes to neighboring sites. And then we projected that outward onto the roadway system with a focus on 206 in as much as that allows individuals to travel south towards Montgomery, Princeton areas and the like, and then obviously on the north toward routes 22, 287 and such. But we included in our report our estimates of that distribution.
In our office's August 10th review letter, under traffic, item number 5, we talk about potential improvements and pro rata fair share contributions for the intersection at 206 and Homestead Road. I haven't heard anything. Is that something that your client will agree to contribute to?
Up to a point, and the reason for that is, in general, I say yes, that's what the statute provides. However, since this application was filed, this board and the governing body adopted an ordinance change to permit, I think it's a 120,000 square foot retail shopping center to facilitate the relocation of ShopRite. The improvements that will be required associated with that application will far exceed any impact associated with this project. So to the extent more improvements are needed as a result of the ShopRite that obviously become more expensive, we'll need to outline the impacts of ShopRite relative to their needed improvements versus this site. Our study had identified a simple retiming of the intersection to address a projected change in level of service, not with this application, but just because of other development in the area. And we would certainly bear the cost of that. It's reprogramming the traffic signal controller. However, add ShopRite into the equation, and I suspect that those improvements become substantially greater than $2,500 it would take to reprogram the existing controller. So that's something this board will need to consider if and when that application is presented. But this applicant will provide their fair share toward the impacts attributed to this site.
Well, just for the purposes of the record, Mr. Chairman, maybe I misunderstood Mr. Dean's testimony. He indicated that somehow this board had approved a 120,000 square foot retail. This board hasn't approved a 120,000 square foot retail anything in the last 2 years since this application was filed. ShopRite does not have an application currently before this board. I don't even think it has an application in the planning department. So maybe I misunderstood Mr. Dean's testimony, but at the moment, the only application related to that site is an application currently in Superior Court relative to the ordinance that the governing body adopted with the planning board as to warehousing.
But I believe, too, I think the point Mr. Dean was making was that the town rezoned the property to permit that type of development.
Which presumably arose through deliberations before this board.
But that wasn't your testimony, Mr. Dean. Your testimony was based on the fact that it's been approved by this board. The only thing that's been approved is a zoning application, is zoning for the property that may or may not ever see the light of day, because the current proposal for the site right now is a subdivision with a warehouse application that's currently in litigation.
I think the point was we will agree to our pro rata share of our off-track impacts. And if that never happens and our off-track impact is changing the timing on the signal, we'll contribute to that. But if that eventually gets approved, then it has to be figured out as part of the developer's agreement, whatever improvements are needed, how much is required because of our project versus what's required because of their project.
Thank you, Mr. Giannetti.
In a similar note, would you and your applicant agree, and this goes to comment number 7 in our August 10th review letter, to pro rata share for improvements along Homestead Road? I'm not talking about the frontage, as you already touched upon. If we need to improve the far side of the center line on portions, would you contribute to the fair share of those contributions?
To the extent they're reasonable and necessary as allowed under the municipal land use law, yes.
Just for that thought there, Mr. Bernstein, I need to understand here, because we're talking about expanding a road. Does that need to be an action or permission granted by the Township Committee? Because it seems like there's an assumption here that there's, that Homestead Road can be expanded. Because when
That will have to be reviewed, I assume, by the township engineer and the board engineer, and to the extent the planning department on the whole issue. I think the issue of whether or not the road can be in fact expanded is going to have to be reviewed.
Right. But when the township have to vacate the right-of-way?
I think that's an issue that's going to have to be reviewed and looked at, Mr. Chairman, before that can be addressed.
Right.
Point of clarification to Mr. Mayhew, his report talks about the existing roadway pavement section, not the widening of the road. That's a big difference. So to the extent the pavement section, in other words, the depth of existing pavement, core samples need to be done. If that needs to be refreshed, yes. widening is not included in Mr. Mayhew's report, so that's a different animal altogether. I don't know that the right-of-way needs to be vacated. It's existing municipal right-of-way, whatever it is. But to the extent the pavement section needs rehabilitation or an upgrade, of course.
Well, Mr. Dean, thank you for the clarification. You're right. Item number 7 in our letter talks about pavement and the existing pavement, and it goes to my next question. Has any pavement cores been taken or any analysis of the existing Homestead Road pavement?
No, and our report responded to the fact that this is an industrial zone wherein the use is permitted. I can only assume that when this board and/or the governing body permitted industrial uses that obviously require tractor-trailer trucks, that the infrastructure was suitable to accommodate the zoning that was created. The fact that trucks use it today is not anything new that this applicant is introducing to the road, and I've seen those signs of excessive deterioration or wear that suggest that the pavement course is not suitable for the trucks that use today. So that is something we can certainly evaluate. I don't think now is the appropriate time, in as much as the road is there and it carries truck traffic.
Well, I've witnessed the roadway as well, and I see significant deterioration on portions of the roadway, especially as you travel between the railroad track overpass and Route 206. Maybe it's more deteriorated there because that's already receiving more traffic, possibly. And I would note that in your May 9th letter, you talk about a daily truck traffic, and we don't know if they're all WB50s, somewhere into 200 to 300. And if we're looking at 160 trucks per day, which we agree is 320 trips, then you're essentially doubling the amount of truck traffic on this roadway. And as you know, the life of a pavement section depends on the equivalent axle loads traveling each year on a roadway. So I would suggest that the life expectancy of this road would greatly decrease. And I'm going to suggest, and I would look for your applicant to agree, to do some pavement cores and some analysis of the capacity of that roadway section now.
Well, I think our testimony was, as a condition of approval, we would do it. If it's a problem, it can be solved. And as a condition of approval, we'll do it. But given how this is going, we're not going to pay for doing it without having an approval.
It's just so I can help clarify. The condition would be that your applicant would perform cores and submit to our office for review a pavement analysis, and would agree to improve the roadway if it didn't meet a certain life expectancy?
Well, I think, which segment of the roadway are you referring to? I think it's the pro rata share of our impact.
Well, I think there's two parts. There's the part, as Mr. Dean's talked about, the frontage that I would believe you're responsible for, and then we're looking at an off-track as well, which would then only be a pro rata fair share.
Correct. We would agree to that as a condition.
And so while I'm on that topic, and I apologize if it's confusing, I still think we need to visit the widening. Our office is concerned at the 4 driveways, and at this point, without some better data, and maybe you'll submit it to clarify it, we're recommending the roadway be widened on the far side to 18 feet half width, 200 feet approaching and exiting each of the 4 driveways. So I'm looking for your comment as to whether you agree to address that, or is there some other way to address that?
Well, I think unless I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, you couldn't tell from the plans that we provided, the truck turning template, and that we agreed to provide it. If, after you review it, and the parties come to an agreement that it needs to be widened, then we can discuss it as a condition of approval. But I don't think we've established yet that it needs to be widened.
Okay. And just to not catch anybody off guard, once we look at those plans, just because the wheel stays on the edge, I think Mr. Dean will agree, that puts that edge of pavement at a very extreme risk of deteriorating quickly, especially a lot of this roadway is not curved. So our office is going to want to make sure that this wheel loads are a couple feet off the edge of pavement. Does that sound reasonable?
I understand what you're asking, yes. Certainly, we will evaluate that, discuss it with the applicant.
Mr. Dean, and maybe this is a question for your planner, Mr. Giannetti, but I'm referring to a section in the TE.
I'm sorry, is this from the review letter or just a comment?
This is a new comment based on the testimony. Is there a proposed a sidewalk and pedestrian-oriented network linking the property to adjoining properties?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Coyce?
I have nothing at this time to ask, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, board members?
Mr. Dean, thank you. You mentioned the prohibition of trucks on Willow Road. Would that change the distribution of trucks or traffic in the current study?
No, we assigned our trips to Route 206.
Has that, but was that, I mean, from the get-go you did?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Did your study consider that there will be 3 shifts proposed in the current development?
We didn't analyze it specifically, but we don't rule it out. Our study assumed that there would be peak hour traffic generated both by vehicles and trucks. To the extent this facility operates on shifts, my testimony would be that moves the site peak hour outside of the street peak hour and therefore suppresses the impacts that we assumed in our study. So to say it another way, we assumed it would be one shift operating generally during normal business hours where employees arrive somewhere between 7 and 9 in the morning and leave somewhere between 4 and 6. So if they run on shifts, then we've overstated the projected impacts of this proposal.
Well, you're talking about the peak hour.
Correct.
The other shifts would occur at a non-peak hour.
Correct.
Right.
Usually, if they start at 7 in the morning, run till 3 in the afternoon, those are outside of the, traditional commuter rush hours.
Right. But that wouldn't consider like the number of employees or that when we asked you for the number of trucks per day, it would increase the number of, just total number of vehicles, but you didn't really look at that, right?
We didn't look at daily. We focus on when the system is most constrained, which is commuter rush hours, when people are leaving home, going to work, and vice versa. So to the extent this operation shifts the time of day of their impacts to off-peak hours, that's actually a benefit.
Well, I don't know that would shift, it might just add. So, but that's, I mean, I understand what you're saying as far as the model and when, the off-peak, let's say the night shift is going to be a different, it's not the peak hour.
Correct.
Yeah. How about I don't remember in your report if the number of employees had anything to do with the number of vehicles, or how you formulated the number of just employees.
Sure. We didn't forecast employees. We look at, in the ITE projections, for example, there's data that's been collected based on the size of the building. And for those sites where employee data was available, there are also some, say, calculations or projections for that. Statistically, however, on a ratio of 2 to 3 times, there are substantially more studies based on building area, because that doesn't change. some facilities can be highly mechanized and have very few employees, ergo limited traffic. So it's not as accurate a means to forecast traffic than the building size is.
And that's the ITE studies are based on area.
On building area.
On building area.
Well, they're based on both, but what I'm saying is if there are 100 studies based on building area, there are 12 based on the number of employees. So statistically, the building area is yielding a better sampling.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Dean, is there any data on road longevity based on truck traffic and the amount of weight? So we're going on a road, like where a normal road might last 20 years on a truck that might see this type of traffic deteriorate at an X rate?
There are, for example, we've all driven the Garden State Parkway, which for the most part prohibits trucks. The pavement lasts longer. We know that trucks, because of their weight, contribute more deterioration to a road surface and require more regular maintenance. But that's why, as Mr. Mayhew had requested, that the thickness of that pavement helps guard against premature deterioration. So there are different pavement thickness standards on roads that have heavier truck use. Your ordinance, if I'm not mistaken, and I might be, some municipal ordinances have a different pavement spec written into your ordinance for heavy-duty pavement versus lighter-duty or, say, automobile-related pavement.
Let me ask it another way. So you've got essentially a 300 to 400 trucks entering this in and out of a mile stretch roughly between your client's proposed warehouse and 206 every day over a bridge. Would you anticipate that road, even built to truck standards, to last as long as you would expect, or do you think that it would deteriorate faster?
I think if it's a DOT bridge, they build for longevity. And
I'm talking about the road, the road itself. Being that you're having a very short window of trucks going over the same pavement all day long, even if it was built to spec that many trucks on a road, do you think it would last typically what you would expect? Do you think it would be in need of repair sooner?
I don't think I explained it well.
I understand. So the road is 6 inches thick, built for trucks.
No,
right?
it's not.
I'm just using a number.
I understand.
Okay.
The pavements, I'm sorry, you finish.
And we have trucks that we normally have going up and down, but now you're concentrating X number of trucks every day, all day on this particular roadway that would normally not be there. Even though it's designed for truck traffic standards, would it deteriorate at a faster rate than if those trucks weren't there?
I think I understand the question. My answer is no, which is why it's built to a higher spec. By your example, a 6-inch pavement spec that one might use in a residential subdivision would not be suitable for an industrial road or a highway such as Route 206 or Homestead. So I understand what Mr. Mayhew has asked. We, upon approval, if the higher spec is needed, recognizing that we don't contribute 100% of the trucks to that road, then yes, we would provide our contribution toward upgrading that road to your specification.
Okay. In your opinion, a road that is designed for the traffic that you see, is there data as to how long that road is viable before it needs repair?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm not a pavement specialist.
I didn't know if there was data that you might have. So if you don't know, you don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. Is there the bridge that the trucks will go over and under? Is there any issues in your opinion as far as sight, especially if two trucks are coming over and there's ample width for them to go by at the same time?
No.
No issue?
No issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments from the dais? Okay, I just have, kind of going back I know there was talk about security, fences and whatnot, and stacking. Yeah, and I'm going to talk about the easternmost building, which I don't know if it's one or two, but the one closest to Homestead Road. In the event, because I know there, I believe testimony was, we don't know, but there's going to be security gates up there. If there's a stacking situation, where do those trucks reside on Homestead Road if they can't make the left turn in because they're stacking of trucks?
Sure. I don't believe the plans show any fencing or any security gates.
But we should expect it because any reasonable distribution center is going to have security around it. I mean,
I'll respectfully disagree with that, Mr. Chairman.
Well, let's say hypothetically then.
And I think they'd have to come for site plan approval or amended site plan if they're going to be putting up a gate. So, I mean, it can be addressed, I think, when it's a reality.
I've seen security operations at industrial plants, manufacturing plants, at a regular warehouse. I'm sure everyone in the room could find one site, but that's not something that's part of this proposal. So I have a hard time answering your question as to a hypothetical stacking at a gate that isn't proposed. And that would be addressed. I mean, if an applicant wanted that, then you would have the specificity as to their shipping, receiving, employees, projections, and the like to better evaluate.
But if it's, divided up, because I'm just going to, let a little reality is usually trucks have what's called seals on them, and there's usually an inspection before they leave property to make sure someone didn't, take a trailer that didn't belong to them and make sure. So there would be expectation if you're going to have, because I think there was talk about multiple tenants in there and stuff, and I think you're going to have a hard time, there's going to be a hard time, selling that without proper security. But
The only place, because the two driveways both lead to the automobile parking on the south side of the building, any security, if it were proposed, would be all the way in the back, because you don't want the employees stopping, waiting for a gate to open. This isn't proposed as a military or high-security pharmaceutical or some sensitive
I
materials.
can tell you simple consumer product goods have that level of security.
Again, it's not part of this application or proposal.
So that may come back to stacking and widening of Homestead Road. So, okay. Okay, if there's no other comments for today, I'm going to entertain a motion to open to public then.
So moved.
Or to the objection.
Oh, sorry, I forgot about you guys. You guys have been, yeah, I know, they've been quiet. I haven't, throw an objection once in a while. Let me know. I'm sorry, yeah, we'll hold that, you guys. Yep, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I guess before I start, I would just ask for some guidance because, the stream corridor issue would have a dramatic, if there was a redesign of the building, it would be a dramatic impact on the design of the facility. And so I'm curious, I'm familiar with the thousands of pages of material that's in the docket, or it's in the file, but I have no idea what we ought to be assuming, what I ought to be assuming.
The current application.
Okay.
As explained, we are presenting our testimony with our upcoming witnesses that it's not applicable, it's preempted, or we've already taken the position it's preempted, that the stream corridor ordinance is not applicable, and if necessary, we'll seek the waiver. So we're not changing the application.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I'll assume that.
You should.
So, Mr. Dean, so I have a number of questions on a number of different topics related to your report. I'll start by asking about trip generation. Were you present for Mr. Valenza's testimony regarding the operation of the proposed warehouses?
Yes.
Okay. Did his testimony trigger a need to revise your report?
No.
And why is that?
I didn't find anything inconsistent with the representations made in our study.
Okay, and so your your trip generation rate is based on the ITE reference, is that true?
For a warehouse, that's correct.
Okay. And that is more accurate, are you representing that that's more accurate than the testimony of the actual operations person for this proposed facility?
No, I'd say it's consistent.
I object, there is no testimony of an operations person for this facility.
My apologies.
I don't think that's true. Mr. Valenza represented himself as both
He's
the architect and the operations. No, and he represented himself as both the operations.
No, he was
architect
providing
and
testimony
operations.
as to operations for a warehouse. He wasn't the operations manager for this particular warehouse.
Okay, I didn't mean to say he was the operations manager, but he provided operations.
Operational testimony as to a warehouse.
Yes. So it seemed like your report is based on the ITE estimates, is that correct?
Correct, but buttressed with the research data that was presented tonight in A9.
Okay, and did you consider the trip generation rates that Mr. Valenza testified to?
I'm reading his summation, and yeah, in my opinion, they are consistent, as I've said.
So he testified that, if you recall, he testified that the trip generation rate for trucks could be as high as 1,080 trips per day.
No, that wasn't his testimony. That was your voodoo math of how it would work out.
I object to that.
No, he did not testify
Mr.
as
Giannetti,
to
that's
trips.
really not appropriate.
He did not
guys,
testify
honestly.
as to the number of trips. And in fact, he said it wasn't a
Do we have to
reality.
do elementary school? I'm going to put my hands up. Come on. For the record, there was no voodoo math, so
Thank you.
please continue.
So, Mr. Valenza, you're saying that his estimate of 1,080 trips per day is consistent with the report?
Objection again, that wasn't his testimony.
Well,
That wasn't his estimate. No, but he's misstating the testimony that was in the record.
And your witness will correct him if he's misstating.
No, but that's my job to object if he's misstating testimony in the record.
Okay, overruled, I'm going to let him go.
I don't recall that being Mr. Valenza's testimony.
Thank you. Next.
Well, I'll move on to my next question. Your report used the land use 150 warehousing as applicable to the development. Is that true?
That is correct.
On what basis did you arrive at that use?
I looked at all of the other available ITE land uses for warehouses, and that one yielded the highest estimates of projected traffic, other than a sorting fulfillment center, which, as Mr. Valenza testified and I testified, this building has not been designed for that sort of use. So using the IT data for warehouse, it yielded the highest trip generation rates.
Now, do you recall that he suggested some other possible uses of the warehouse?
I have his summation that is a written description of proposed warehouse uses and operation, and they ran the gamut between empty cans and electrical motors to stoves and washers and dryers. So that, to me, is a traditional warehouse.
So it wasn't necessarily in his summation, but it was in his testimony. Do you recall that he suggested that it could be a distribution center? It's not specifically designed as such, but it could be. In fact, he said it's very similar. A regular warehouse is very similar to a distribution center. In fact, we call it the same thing, he says.
I don't recall that.
Do you have the transcript to cite from?
Sure. Can we project? Is it possible?
No, I think everyone wants to see it. If it's quick.
Yep.
Oh. In which meeting was this?
This was the September 7th. Oh, it was, okay, thank you. Okay, it's probably appropriate to go over some of the math, since it's not fully understood. So if you go to page 59 of the transcript, I have it displayed here.
Not up there yet.
Okay.
What's the date yet?
So the September 9th, 2023.
September 7th.
September 7th.
The record reflect Mr. Julian's left the dais.
And I guess I'd also object to the relevancy. The architect is not testifying as to the trip generation and the truck trip generation. That's what Mr. Gary Dean is testifying to.
Actually, that's not true. Mr. Valenza, as the operations expert, testified to the rate at which trucks could be generated from the facility. So that
No,
he
I think
wasn't-
you were asking him questions about that.
Okay, and he was answering those questions. Is that considered testimony?
No, we can go through the transcript,
Great.
because they were all hypotheticals that he disputed.
Do I need to do something on my computer? Maybe. Nope.
There you go. There we go.
I want to see some of the other. Okay, so on page 60, I asked him.
Page
60? 60. I asked him, what is the time it takes to unload a truck? He said 60 minutes. And what is the time to load a truck? He said about 60 minutes. And so then I said that, okay, so that so you can unload a truck and load a truck in 2 hours. He said it's possible. So that an 8-hour shift, you could have as many as 4 trucks if they're 2 hours each, and he agreed to that potentially, he said. So I said, so one truck dock is 4 trucks, and if it's 3 shifts, that's how many in a 24-hour period. He needed me to repeat that, but he eventually arrived at 12. And so 12 is the number of trucks that can be generated, that could be serviced by a single dock, the most number, okay? That is the maximum number, if 60 minutes. Now, actually, we have, I don't want to testify, so I
I'm
won't.
sorry, can we just get to the question? I mean, the testimony is even clear right there. He says it right there. Yeah, mathematically, it's possible. Practically, I don't believe it's possible.
Yeah.
So he didn't testify as he represented that those are the number of trips. We have our traffic engineer here tonight. Let's ask the traffic engineer as to his testimony as to truck traffic.
So he went on to say, mathematically it's possible.
Chairman,
practically,
again,
I don't believe so.
I'm finished.
Finish,
And
but
he
just
says-
reading into the transcript. He's just reading a transcript. There's not been a question. He's testified as to traffic.
Mr.
the
Chianetti,
question-
if you want this hearing to end sometime in our lifetimes, let him ask. If he can't get to the question, he'll get moved along, as you have seen this board do throughout the multiple of hearings. Mr. Tarantino, get to a question.
Okay, so my question for Mr. Dean was, does he agree, did he take into consideration the truck generation rate that Mr. Valenza testified to or spoke about?
Objection. You were testifying through your questioning. He did not testify to that trip generation.
I'm reading from the transcript. I said.
Let me rephrase it. What did you use for your analysis?
I used ITE data, which is a compilation of empirical studies, not theoretical, mathematical.
I'm not going to say theory. No, I just asked you the question. You used ITA, so you ignore this input. This input, Mr. Valenza or whatever. His input did not weigh into your...
It absolutely did
Okay.
not, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so.
Okay. With a second. And then you were questioning Mr. Giannetti where he talked about other potential uses of the facility. And it's important because those uses have a much higher generation rate. Distribution facilities, transload facilities, those kinds of things.
Respectfully, I'll disagree with that comment. We've compared all of the different uses, and transload, short-term, all yield less traffic than the warehouse rate we used.
Do you have documentation for that?
Yes.
Is that in your report?
I believe it is, yes.
Can you refer me to it, the page number?
I'll let you refer to the ITE data. I've testified to it.
No, where you had for the transload facility, Mr. Valenza suggested that the facility can vary considerably. Distribution center, a high-throughput transload facility, a cold storage warehouse, or a trucking depot were the uses that he mentioned in his testimony. Do you have what you're saying, Mr. Dean, is that you've compared the trip generation rates for those uses, and use warehouse 150 is the highest?
That is correct.
And what page on your report is that? I have your report up right now.
It's page 7, where we talk about land use 150 warehouse. And at the time, our report included the small office that was subsequently, the application was amended to eliminate that component.
Yeah, and so where is the comparison to these other warehouse types?
I've testified to it. I don't have all of my documents in front of me, but that is the ITE different land use codes associated with warehousing facilities.
So is that in your report?
I don't recall.
You don't recall?
It's in my testimony.
It's in his testimony. You asked him a question, he's testified to it. It doesn't need to be in his report.
I'm just asking a question.
And he's answered it.
If it's in his report. He said it was, and now it's not, so, okay.
I believe it was in...
Don't bother with him.
Can we go to, I'd like to go to the ITE trip generation page. So this is the warehousing 150. This is the graph. I'm assuming, of course, you're familiar with this.
And could you show me the top portion of...
Sure, yeah, of course.
Let the record reflect Mr. Julian is rejoined.
All right, I have that.
Great.
Chart.
So on the graph, how many data points on this graph predict 0 truck trips?
I don't know that there's any.
The ones on the bottom on the x-axis, where the y-axis value is 0, aren't those warehouses of a certain size but have 0 truck trips? Isn't that the case?
It could be 1. I can't tell at this resolution.
1 would be like, this is a 1 to 5 scale, as you can see. So those, do you think, could be 1? They're right sitting on the axis.
My testimony is they could be 1s. What's your question?
My question is how many, so you said that how many of these warehouses, these 150 warehouses, are predicting 0 truck trips?
I have no idea.
Okay, and you can't tell from this graph?
I cannot.
Okay. And so this page says the average the average generation rate is 0.02 trips per 1,000 square feet. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it has a standard deviation of 0.05, is that right?
Correct.
So, as a technical traffic expert, how reliable is this regression when the standard deviation is 2.5 times the average?
There is no regression. If you'll notice, there's no fitted curve equation, so there's been no regression analysis.
Okay. And there's no regression analysis because why, do you suppose?
Statistically, the data points don't follow any type of curve or mathematical equation that would lend itself to a calculation on a linear basis or logarithmic basis.
Okay. So did you consider then the range of rates rather than the average rate?
I did.
And what did you end up using?
Well, I use the ITE data in as much as that is what the average entails. However, referring to A9 as was submitted tonight, with the exception of, I think, only one site, all of the other locations that we have studied show less truck trips or fewer truck trips than ITE would otherwise submit.
Yeah, so my question is, did you consider, you said yes, you considered the range of rates. What was the rate that you ended up using?
Our report used 7.
Right, 7 per 369 square feet. So that's 0.02, isn't that correct? 0.02 per 1,000 square feet?
Correct.
Okay, so you used the average, even though the range is 0 to 0.69.
Correct.
Okay. And so you feel that that's still representative to take the average?
I feel it's representative in light of data that we have compiled in New Jersey for similarly sized warehouse facilities, showing exceptional consistency with the IT data.
Given that this rate is an average, how often will the truck generation rate be greater than the average?
I have no way to answer that.
Well, it's really more of a math question. When you have an average, how often are you above the average?
Well, there's a mean, a median, and an average. If you want to know average, it's 50% above and 50% below.
So you're saying half the time, the actual truck generation rate is going to be higher than what you've estimated here?
No, not half the time.
Half of the instances, I'm sorry, to say it more correctly, half of the instances will be higher.
No, in any given instance, it might be higher or it might be lower.
Right, but if you looked at all the possible, if you looked at the range of instances, half of them will be higher than the 0.02 that you chose. Is that correct?
I don't understand the question. Repeat, please.
Given that you used an average rate, and this is an average based on these warehouses, how often would a warehouse show a generation rate higher than this number?
I've answered that question already.
Yeah, you said 50%, that's right.
No, that wasn't my answer.
What was your answer? I'm sorry, I missed it.
I said on any given instance,
Yeah.
it could be higher or it could be lower.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that, but that's not my question. My question isn't, could it be higher or lower? My question is, how often?
I can't predict that.
Mathematically,
I can't
when you have an
predict that.
average.
Yeah, we covered that.
Okay.
It's actually the median.
Well,
Is
in this
when half the
instance-
values are above that versus half, so just statistics 101, so you don't calculate medians.
Median and average are the same.
No, mean.
No, they're not.
And average are the same. Median.
ITE uses average.
Okay, so you don't calculate the median.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm skipping questions that have already been asked. So if the facility services small trucks, do you have an estimate for the number of small trucks that would be that the facility would generate?
ITE shows total trucks, not limited to tractor trailers. So smaller trucks are included in these projections.
So how many tractor trailers is in this? So of the total in a day, which you said was I believe you said that this facility, where do I have that down? You said it would be 320 trips per day. So of those 320, how many would be tractor trailers?
That has not been calculated.
So please explain why the number of truck trips is impacted in any way by the area of the building. Couldn't you have a small warehouse that is very active, generating many trips? And couldn't you also have a large warehouse that is a long-term archive storage and have very few truck trips?
Well, I think the data shows that very premise. I mean, there's a warehouse facility that's more than 2.5 million square feet that generated 25 truck trips, or 13 trucks in an hour. So, yes, that can happen.
So I guess my question is, please explain why the square footage of the building is in any way predictive of the number of truck trips.
Again, what you see on the exhibit on the screen, which is an excerpt from our report, are data plots. The exact number of truck trips for a given size facility in 1 hour. So at the most, there's 25 trips, 12 trucks an hour, one every 5 minutes. I'm not getting too worried about that from a traffic engineering perspective.
How are you getting that?
Just read the line. Trips on the left. Trip ends, 25. The most for any building ever studied by ITE in 21 sites is 25 truck trips. 12 in, 13 out.
And so that's more than 3 times the rate at which you predicted.
I don't look at percentages. I look at raw numbers, which is why one truck every 5 minutes doesn't impress me from a traffic engineering perspective.
But it's more than 3 times the number that you've predicted. Isn't that true?
I represented or summarized the IT data of 7, given a 369,000 square foot facility. Are there some that generated more truck trips? Yes. Are there some that generated fewer? Yes. 7 is the average. But assume it's the highest. 25 truck trips is not going to get me excited from a traffic engineering perspective in a peak hour.
So that peak out, and what about the total number of trucks per day?
We didn't study that. We study when the system is most constrained.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the New Jersey Planning Commission guidance on warehouse siting?
I'm familiar with it. I haven't committed it to memory.
Okay. Did you know that this guidance specifies that traffic impact studies should include a truck and automobile trip analysis to project and break out different vehicle trips throughout the entire day, not just peak hours, to capture the full potential magnitude generated from a proposed warehouse? Are you familiar with that specification in that guidance document?
I am not.
Okay. Would you be willing to revise your report to reflect the guidance, the requirement,
It's a guidance document. It's not a requirement document. It has no binding authority.
My question is, would you be willing to revise your report to include the recommended traffic impact study elements that the New Jersey Planning Commission recommends?
I believe that my study satisfies the recognized professional criteria for traffic engineering studies, in that by studying the roadway system when it is most constrained, to the extent that there was trip generation from a given site at other hours of the day that isn't as constrained, logically, if we study it at the worst time, any other time that we study is not going to be meaningful or relevant. So by studying what we have, I believe we have presented the worst case assumptions in terms of impact. What occurs at 2 in the afternoon is not particularly meaningful or relevant.
My question was, are you willing to revise your report to include the elements that the New Jersey Planning Commission recommended to be included for traffic impact studies.
I don't know the specifics of those recommendations to know.
Do you mind if I read them to you?
Whether our study hasn't sufficiently addressed that criteria.
Do you mind if I?
Well, let's just cut to the chase. Are you looking, or would you be willing, under any circumstance, to make amendments to your current report?
I don't think that amendment is necessary, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, you got your, it's not going to change. So what we have is what we have.
But I think you just represented that you believe that your report because it follows some good practice, that it meets those requirements, the recommendations of that guidance. Is that what you said?
I don't understand your question.
When I asked if you would be willing to revise your report to include the recommendations from that report, you said, my report is based on good practice, so it probably addresses all of those things. Isn't that right?
I don't know the criteria, so I can't answer yes or no. I don't believe it's necessary.
I'd be willing to share with you what those recommendations are.
Objection, just move on. He's asked a question, he's answered it.
I agree. He's not going to amend his report.
Okay.
No.
I'm sorry, I'm just skipping over questions that were already asked.
I would also submit that based on the language of that citing guidance, we have furnished this board with the requested information, which is different vehicle trips throughout the day.
I mean, one of the requirements is traffic studies should extend beyond the site and analyze the anticipated truck routes between the project location and the closest highway access points, page 25 of the report. I didn't see that in your report.
You're aware we studied the intersection of Homestead and 206, correct?
The closest highway access, 206 is not a highway.
Wow, I beg to differ. I'll stand by my reputation. It's
called U.S. Highway.
U.S. Highway Route 206.
Okay.
So let's move on to some relevant questions, please.
Voodoo roadways.
So how many employees did you assume when estimating the number of car trips per day?
I didn't.
How much, didn't you say ITE predicted that?
No, ITD doesn't predict employees.
So how many car trips per day did you project?
I don't recall that total number. We focused a lot on trucks per day. I don't recall the total daily trip generation.
What routes do you expect the trucks to take out of the warehouse? I mean, beyond the intersection of Homestead Road and 206?
Well, they go on 206. Some go north, some go south.
Okay. Will their destinations be mainly within Hillsborough or outside Hillsborough?
I don't have any way to project that.
What do you expect will be the most common major highway the trucks will use besides Route 206? Major highway like Route 287 or 295 or the Turnpike, the highways.
Your definition of highways, to be clear.
Interstate, okay, interstates.
I have not studied that within this report.
Do you think that's a relevant topic with regard to the impact that this facility will have on Hillsborough?
I can state, I think fairly authoritatively, that the only highway in Hillsborough is Route 206.
Yeah, that's not my question. My question is...
He said he can't answer it.
Well, it's a land use matter in front of Hillsborough Township, so where that truck traffic goes in Bridgewater, Somerville, Raritan, Bedminster is really not something worthy of discussion with this board.
But it's relevant because it would talk about where the trucks would travel through Hillsborough. That's why it's relevant. Will they all be trying to get to 287, or will they all be trying to go south to 295? What do you think is the most likely route that trucks would take to reach an interstate?
Both of those are very viable routes. 206 further south through Montgomery and into Princeton and the like, ultimately getting to Route 95, 295, and then to the north, as you identified, routes 22, 287, 28, 78, 287.
So how many trucks will travel through the Hillsborough Town Center? So that would be turning right or northbound on 206.
There will be a difference between inbound trucks, outbound trucks. I can't predict that at this time.
So let me, if you don't mind, we could go to page 53 of your report. So this is the, what I believe, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, this is the describing the movement of traffic at the intersection of Homestead Road and Route 206 under the proposed warehouse scenario. Is that right?
Correct.
So for the trucks leaving or moving from Homestead Road onto at the Homestead Road intersection, traveling that had traveled west, okay? You are, is this an accurate prediction of the distribution of trucks, of truck movements at that intersection?
This is a highway capacity analysis that traffic engineers use to effectively grade or rate intersection operations. They include a number of factors as indicated on the left, such as the lane widths and how long the signal is green, and then it includes a percentage of heavy vehicles.
Okay, and so the second row there says traffic volume, vehicles per hour, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and so I'm looking at the trips that are predicted where it says WBT, westbound, I guess that's going
through, that's correct.
Through. Okay, I'm sorry. So it would be westbound right would be 107, is that right?
Correct.
And westbound left would be 36?
Correct.
And westbound through, meaning going through the intersection, not turning on 206, but going straight?
Correct.
Is that right? So, on what basis did you estimate this?
Those are from a compilation of the layering process where we use existing traffic counts. We used traffic volumes from known developments that were indicated in our report, and then finally the site-generated traffic.
Okay. So this is predicting that 48% of the total traffic will turn right towards the Hillsborough Town Center. Is that right? Is that correct?
I haven't done the math. I don't know.
Okay, but
it's more than 48%. No, actually, you might be right.
So
That's about right.
107 out of 79 plus 107 plus
Correct.
34. So it's about, that's about 200, and about 107 of it is turning right.
Nope, I agree.
So is it safe to assume then that of your total truck generation rate per day,
Not per day, in the peak hour. That's what this analysis is. It's an AM peak hour modeling.
Okay. How would you estimate? So you had testified that you would expect 320 truck trips per day from the facility.
No, 160 trucks per day.
Right. I said 320 truck trips. So 160 So 48% of those will be turning right at the intersection into the town center, is that right?
This is an analysis of only the AM peak hour. Beyond that, we have not indicated any projections of your concern. This shows that of that 107 vehicles, 10% are comprised of heavy vehicles, trucks.
I'm sorry, I was looking for the PM to see, because I
Well,
think
that's on a different page.
Yeah, the numbers are similar. Where does it show the heavy vehicles? The 10%?
Yeah, it's halfway down the page. I don't know that.
Oh, heavy vehicles.
I
Here
need
we
to
go.
explain.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the morning, you're talking about 48% of the trucks turning right.
No, I said 48% of the traffic turns right.
Okay, and so what percentage of the trucks?
Of 107, 10%, or roughly 11, are heavy trucks that turn right.
Okay. Can those ratios be applied to the total number of truck trips per day?
No.
Okay, what would be the right ratio?
I've already answered that question. We have not looked at this on a daily basis.
So do you think that's a relevant factor to consider, how many truck trips are going to be traveling, how many tractor trailers are going to be traveling through the planned Hillsborough Town Center?
No, I've looked at the analysis of this intersection at two discrete peak hours associated with the development of this property, generated by a permitted use in the zone.
So you don't feel like it's a relevant factor to consider, is the number of truck trips, heavy trucks traveling through the town center?
Objection, asked and answered.
Okay.
That was determined when the property was zoned.
I was clarifying because he didn't actually restate it the way I said it, so I just was clarifying that he answered the question the way I asked it. He said something different, so it sounds like...
Objection, asked and answered.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a follow-up question based on what Mr. Tarantino's a point he's raised? Mr. Dean, would your applicant, so the anticipation with New Jersey DOT as part of the weight restriction on Willow Road was the anticipation that trucks would use the bypass. And you bring up a good point here. You're distributing trucks on 206 north and south. Would it be possible, if trucks want to go north, to make the left and then make the left at Hillsborough onto the bypass and then use the bypass to go north? Is that feasible?
It's feasible. It's a longer route and takes more time and adds more mileage. It's feasible, but is it likely?
I'm just going to throw a quick interjection. Eventually, that is going to be a 25-mile-an-hour zone. Does that change your answer?
And I would imagine as this community reacts to these proposals, much like you did on Willow, it would not be unexpected to see similar ordinances enacted so that truck traffic appropriately stays on the highways.
Well, the state actually will make the determination when that gets reduced to 25 miles an hour. But that is kind of that is the game plan with with bringing on the bypass or some other, I think, hurdles to clear for the state, but that is eventually going to turn into a 25-mile-an-hour zone, so.
But, Mr. Dean, irregardless of the current speed limit on that section of 206, you mentioned there is a slight distance increase of going south for a little bit before the truck turns onto the bypass. It's not very far from Homestead to Hillsborough Road. And I'm not sure if it actually adds time to the truck trip or not because of the traffic lights. Would it be feasible for you and your client to address this issue ahead of time and have these trucks avoid the downtown section of 206?
There's no way for this applicant to control what happens once those trucks hit the highway. It's a permitted movement on a highway that accommodates arguably dozens, if not hundreds of trucks. I don't know how that could be regulated, other than the municipality enacting an ordinance that, for example, that says coming out of Homestead, trucks no right turn.
But at this point, so I can clarify, you and your applicant are not suggesting to put any restriction on the truck trips then?
Not at all. We acknowledge that the ordinance was enacted on Willow. Beyond that, restricting truck movements on what is still a state highway, that would be highly unusual.
I'm not commenting on that one way or the other. I just want to clarify what your study's saying and the impact on the roadway, that's all.
Sure, and our study assumes that there are no such restrictions. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sorry for the interruption.
Mr. Chairman, one other follow-up question, if I may, for Mr. Dean. If the state redesignates what is now 206 running through downtown Hillsborough, would things change to a municipal road? The plan is, you're aware, you're not, Mr. Dean?
Very much aware. I think it's been close to 30 years.
Would your statement as to the ability to restrict truck movements would change, would it not, if the...
Correct.
Thank you.
The municipality is free to control their own roads, yes.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, then, if that's going to occur at some point, then the truck distribution turning movements at 206, all those trucks, or a large portion of those trucks, would then all have to turn left at that signal.
Well, he's got 40% going straight to
Okay.
the
I think there's a lot of
high
us-
school also.
Yeah, just finish your thought.
All I wanted to say was, if that's a feasible anticipation, would it be appropriate to amend the traffic study to make sure that intersection can handle the additional left-hand turns?
Listen, I get paid to do these analyses, so I'll do them all day long, but it reaches a point where that is not a proposal that is part of this application, and this application certainly predates that. If the municipality were to enact that, I think you would need to consider what that effect is on all of the other businesses that are served by truck traffic on Route 206, which is arguably the main commercial corridor in the township. So I understand the request. I just don't know whether it's really viable. And I know, to Mr. Bernstein's point, the desire to take over existing 206 has been around since 1995.
Now,
and it has-
I'm going to object, okay? And we're going to set reality. It's not, this is the plan, has always been, and now that the bypass is open, there's, is going to become a reality sooner than later. There's just a few things the state needs to do. So back to my original question is, if that was a 25-mile-an-hour road, would that change your analysis of the number of trucks turning?
I misunderstood.
Yeah,
The
that's what-
entire section through Nelson's Corner and north, that would all be 25. Is that?
Until the bypass reconnects.
I will need to look at that more
Okay.
closely.
Okay, I'm also just going to let, this is kind of like a soccer match. I know we had some stoppages, so I'm adding a little bit of time. We typically stop at 10, but I think we'll go about another 10 to 15 minutes.
I would make a point that we do have to come back to another matter after this is over.
Okay.
I understand, but I would appreciate the indulgence of, half the time on cross-examination, our witnesses are just explaining to them what's in their report, and just used to delay.
Giannetti, you're well aware that your clients are subject to be asked about their reports. I understand the frustration.
Not reading it.
I've timed it the frustration, but understand everybody's. So, you're talking 10:20, Mr. Chairman?
10:20, yes. We'll stop testimony or cross-examination.
Well, I mean, I have quite a bit more, still more questions on traffic, so.
We
I
got
mean,
15 more minutes for
Okay,
tonight.
unless you wanted to cover your other topic, so.
No, we'll do
You've been
that
told
right
to
after.
ask.
Okay. So this, and I hope you understand, Mr. Dean, that I'm actually asking clarifying questions about your report, not like for you to read the report to me. So are you willing to provide a breakdown of the total number of truck trips that will be turning, that you predict will be turning right in a given day, daily, into the town center?
I will stipulate that it's 50/50, and that means it's 80 per day that turn right and go through the town center.
Okay, so your prediction, no wait, 50?
I'll just say, for discussion purposes, let's assume it's 50%. 80 trucks on a daily basis.
Oh, wait, 160, okay, I gotcha. So 80 trucks per day through the town center.
That's not my testimony, but I'll entertain your question for hypothetical. Where are we going with this?
No, nowhere. Just
Okay.
pointing out the impact of this building on the town center, that's all. And you also this report also predicts that 40% of the traffic, including truck, but also the cars, the employee cars, will be going straight on Homestead Road towards the high school.
There are no trucks projected to go straight toward the high school on Homestead.
Okay, but cars, so the 40% of the automobiles are going to be going straight.
There's existing traffic, there's proposed traffic. If we look at Figure 5 in our report, we project 1 car going straight in the morning and 5 in the evening peak hour, and about the same in the opposite direction. Coming from Homestead, traveling east in the morning is 5 and 2 coming toward the site at night.
So, I'm sorry, you're citing figure 5? Figure 5 or table?
I guess I'm going to object to the relevancy. I mean, is his point that there's nothing that's allowed to be built here that can generate any traffic? There are a lot of uses beyond warehouses that are permitted on this property that can be built. What's the relevancy of cars, driving down Homestead Road?
I mean,
I'm asking the
I'm
chairman.
I'm happy to answer that, but it won't be in the
What's
form of
the-
a question.
Well, I guess looking at the point you were bringing up, what's the question that's going to come from that? Are you questioning the data or the analysis?
I'm questioning the analysis
Okay,
that
and
he predicted he predicted that there would be a volume of cars going through the intersection towards the high school. 40% of the volume would be going straight. And
So you're saying crossing over 206?
Yeah, towards the high school.
That's
which is-
incorrect, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
We
Well,
did
and
not
let's get it
project
clarified.
40%.
Okay.
Well, you have 79 on this table. You have 79 westbound through.
Yeah, in the morning peak hour, most of those are kids going to high school.
Okay. And so you're predicting out of, and you said figure 5? I'm sorry, I'm looking for that. Figure 5 of your report? I don't have that.
Is there another question?
Okay. Okay. So, on page 5 of your report, you describe the current condition of westbound left and through movement at service level F. Is that right?
That is correct.
And yet, page 6, you say, the analysis results are consistent with typical operations at the study intersections. No congestion was observed.
That's correct.
So how could there be no congestion observed, and yet with a service level F?
Service level of F means you wait more than 80 seconds. And the way DOT sets the timing of the light, even if there was one car, you still wait 80 seconds. So I'll stand by my report and the conclusions and our observations.
Okay. So I'm quoting your report. Your report says that you use developments that are under consideration or recently approved and or under construction in the area they are taken into account. So what are the properties? So I have listed the properties, but again, I would ask it as a question. What are the properties that you considered in your analysis for future traffic?
Yeah, the report states them.
Okay. You included Hillmont. I'm sorry. You included the Vitamin Factory.
Again, we're just reading his report.
You have a
This
question?
is a waste of time. And
My
he's just
question is,
filibustering.
we
got the point.
Would your analysis change if you also included the other approved developments near this building, near this development, namely the Hillmont, the medical office building at 692 Route 206, the corporate office building at 668 Route 206, and the Franklin Hillsborough Apartments at 649 Route 206?
Yeah, I don't know what those are.
Those are
Objection, he's
developments that are
testifying. He
under
can
consideration.
objection. He
Those
can-
are developments
objection.
Those are developments
Objection,
that are...
as is always, he's testifying. He'll have his opportunity to filibuster during public comment.
I object to that. I object to that characterization.
Well-
I'm asking a legitimate question.
No, I mean, what he's objecting is that you're going to define what those properties are, and he doesn't feel you're qualified to define them, which, so the question is did he take into consideration those four properties in his analysis?
Right.
Okay, did you take, and what's your answer?
My report states what we took into consideration.
Did you take those four
I
properties?
don't know what those are, so they have names. We identify them by the number of apartments and the number of retail space. However, the developer has labeled these for marketing, I don't know what they're
I
called.
think it was given street addresses, so how are you defining them in your report?
I've defined them as a mixed-use development located on Route 206, northwest of the site, is under construction. 191 units and 28,000 square feet. I think that's the Larkin job next to Bottle King.
Okay, no street address or anything?
I
you
don't know
just-
what it is.
Okay.
Okay, and did you take into consideration the proposed warehouse at 279 Homestead?
That was filed after this application. In that traffic study for that application, we have taken this project's impacts into consideration with that. And if I'm not mistaken, in one of our more recent updates to Pannoni in May of this year, we did include that project in our future calculations. So the answer is yes. 279 has been included.
I'm sorry, what date?
There have been multiple submissions to this board. I don't recall the date.
Okay, but you're saying it was included?
Yes.
I'll have to check that. And so you, in that letter, you redid your traffic analysis?
Correct.
I definitely missed that. Your report indicates a level of service for the Homestead 206 intersection at F for westbound traffic turning left at the AM peak hour for the existing no-build and build conditions.
Correct.
Under what circumstances would a traffic report suggest that the proposed use is not appropriate given the difficult traffic conditions?
Well, I'll defer to Mr. Giannetti and Mr. Bernstein as to the prevailing case law as to off-track considerations that are unrelated and predate a given application. However, our report indicated what the mitigation for that deficient existing condition was, and that was a retiming of the light.
And the retiming of the light would result in what level of service?
No worse than under existing conditions, but quite frankly, I think we improved it to remedy the level of service F to E.
Your report suggests it would be F to F.
We have in Table 1 of our report, it notes build with mitigation, and it shows that F remains, but whereas the delay is 84.2 seconds under existing conditions, with the mitigation and retiming, it would be improved to 82.9 seconds. So no worse than existing conditions and marginally better.
Same level of service, though, F.
Correct.
Okay.
This applicant didn't create it, and we've addressed the appropriate mitigation.
So there's no obligation to improve that?
We've stipulated to it. Well, I don't understand the question. To reprogram of the light, the township has to request it of DOT. If the traffic volumes used in the report ever materialize.
So in the PM peak hour, your facility is changing the signalized level of service for the Homestead Road westbound left turning, that's the critical turn, from a D for the existing and no build scenario to an E. What mitigation are you proposing for that loss of service?
That would be the same signal retiming.
So how is it possible for you to consider that as your mitigation when you have no control over whether that's going to happen?
It's not we contribute our pro rata fair share toward reasonable and necessary off-track improvements. The fact that it's already at level of service F is not a condition this applicant created. However, we have proposed mitigation that will make it no worse than it is today.
Okay, and then what about the PM peak hour left turning? What is you didn't include a column for build mitigation. What would the mitigated peak level of service be?
We're under no obligation to restore it to pre-existing conditions. So we didn't propose specific mitigation nor do an analysis, but you'll see it's an increase in delay of 6 seconds.
So you decreased the level of service from D to an E and produced and provided no analysis nor mitigation for that loss of service. Is that true?
It's 6 seconds of delay.
It is a change using your metric. It's a change from D to E.
Objection. Again, he's going over the same thing.
It was asked and answered, Mr. Tarantino, okay?
And the applicant is not obligated to fix the traffic problems.
We're moving on.
That's not the standard.
We're moving on. No testimony.
It's not testimony, it's argument.
Okay, well, we've
We
argued.
can't get through any witness.
We're working through.
Your page 1 of your report said the purpose of the analysis to, quote, evaluate the adequacy of the roadway system to accommodate the new traffic generated by the warehouse. Do you believe the roadway system is adequate to accommodate the new traffic?
I do, yes.
How does that
To be
square?
fair, Mr. Tarantino, that was asked about an hour and a half ago.
And it's in his
Yes.
report.
Bear in mind, our report and those levels of service also include the office building, which is no longer part of this. So whatever you're reading overstates the traffic.
Okay, and we're at 10:20, so.
Okay.
I don't have a buzzer, so.
That's all right.
Well, I would like to confirm, though, that Mr. Tarantino is done with his cross-examination.
I am not.
And well, he should be done, because he just wasted about 45 minutes of our time.
Thanks for letting me know that I should be, but I'm not.
Doesn't matter, the board is free to cut you off at any time.
Right, and we are free to let him go, too. So
Understood.
we'll see what questions he brings up next time, but we're going to try to,
I'll go through mine and take out the ones that have already been covered, for sure.
okay. Okay, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bernstein, do we need to extend, don't we? Because the time of decision.
I think we need a next hearing date. To extend.
Well,
Mr. Bernstein doesn't get that.
Yeah, no,
that
but
wonderful.
But before I misspeak, we do need to have a time of decision extended and find a new hearing date.
Well, I believe, I was talking with Mr. Coyce, and our understanding is we were going to be carried to the reorg meeting, which I believe is January 11th. Is that correct?
Be the regular meeting that would take place immediately after the reorg meeting, January 11th.
Yep. But you also need to extend a time of decision because it expires the end of the year.
Wait, correct. Can you say that again?
Oh, I'm sorry. So January 11th is the date of our reorg meeting, and then immediately after the reorg meeting is when the regular meeting would occur?
On January 11th?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And
so the reorg meeting starts at 7, and the regular takes
Sure.
place whenever the reorg finishes.
Is it
We'll
279?
we'll extend the time to act to January 12th.
Isn't,
I'll repeat myself from about an hour ago. I'm suggesting, Mr. Giannetti, that in the interim, you and your client have a conversation, because at some point, this is going to come to an end, thankfully, and the board is going to need opportunity. If we're going to have this every time to the next meeting situation, the board's going to be required to make decisions.
I'm going to make a suggestion that we push the time decision out further and maybe reserve another night besides January 11th, because you're going to start to lose time on that calendar. Because he's going to start taking requests from now till the 11th, so. And I see your client was shaking his head.
Yeah,
with
so I
me,
get it.
affirmative, so.
Is there another?
How far were we talking?
I mean,
because
we're trying to
have
get
a
through.
number. We have quite a number of applications that we're going to be, required to get through due to statutory time limits.
Well, this is technically a statutory time limit.
What's on the agenda for the
Yeah.
25th, if anything?
On which date?
25th.
That is another hold for Homestead 279. Or that is,
Well,
Right.
well, let's put it this way. Here's my suggestion. We put Homestead 279 on for the 8th. When is Homestead 279's time of decision extinction? You should have it, because it's the thing you wanted to discuss later. I think the chairman has it.
well, the two possible dates at the last hearing, I believe there was the two possible dates at Homestead 279 was going to be on, was either January 11th or the 25th, and that the board was going to make a decision.
When's the time of decision rule?
For which?
Well, Homestead 279.
The 31st January.
Well,
So-
here's my suggestion. My suggestion, we put them both on.
What?
For the night of the 25th. Mr. Coy still has to make determinations regarding same. Homestead 279 will go first. And if they can start, we can then at some point split it and go back to Mr. Giannetti.
What's happening? I know we just put something on the 8th. What's on the February 1st?
Weston Road.
Weston Road.
Weston Road.
Weston Road.
But wasn't it just the?
Oh, February 8th. Well, we added 303 Amwell Road to February 8th, and Weston Road
for the 1st.
It is February 1st.
So the option is February the 8th, Mr. Giannetti, or you can take a piece of the 25th on top of the 11th.
I think the 8th is going to be wide open, is my
Well,
thoughts.
we've got, I agree with Mr. Coyce, there are a number of applications that need to be addressed that don't begin with the letter W over the next few weeks and months who are coming up on time frames, so they have to start.
Just to be clear, were you saying on the 8th we would have the full evening?
No, we're saying on the 8th you would get probably a majority, if not all of it, but we can't commit at this point because I said the board's got a number of applications deemed complete that have to get addressed during the initial time of decision rule.
That we'll take January 25th.
Okay. And depending on where we are with that application, we will advise you, Mr. Giannetti, approximately what time you can come at 7 o'clock, but approximately what time you should think about starting again. Which is Mr. Tarantino. You have any questions of Mr. Dean? No, not Mr. Michael, do you have any questions of Mr. Dean?
I don't expect any questions, Mr.
Okay.
Dean.
I can't promise we won't have it from the two missing objectors, but I would, if that's I would like to add one more thing relative to same before we do the various decisions. Mr. Giannetti, if you intend to call Mr. Cook on the 25th, and he's going to testify relative to what he submitted to DEP in conjunction with the freshwater wetlands application, I would suggest you turn it into the board at least 10 days in advance. If that's what he's going to testify to.
He's going to testify as to the DEP wetlands application, field visits with the DEP, and the LOI issued by the DEP, as well as an expert, his application of the regulations concerning wetlands and permits.
Whatever he submitted as part of the application for DEP, any other paperwork that he may have provided DEP during the application process, any paperwork that he submitted after the site visit, any notes he has regarding the site visit, all need to be turned in 10 days in advance of the next
I disagree.
hearing.
Why does he have to provide handwritten notes of a site visit with the DEP?
I didn't say, I'll strike that item for the list. I would, however, point out that Mr. Cook's legal interpretation of how the regulations read or don't read can be dealt with accordingly at the time, but unless he's going to tell you he's a licensed member of the bar.
Well, I think just
his experience, but that may.
Yeah, I mean, as an expert, he interprets and applies DEP regulations, just like a planner interprets and applies zoning ordinances, or an engineer interprets it and applies. He's not going to opine it's preempted, but he'll be testifying as to the underlying, facts of that.
Thank you.
But that should be 10 days in advance of the 11th, because I anticipate.
But I'm still not.
Well, he just was saying any documents he may have submitted
to DEP.
To DEP.
Sure.
Yeah.
I struck out the item you requested I remove.
So I'm sorry, just a clarification. So are we continuing with this on the 11th, January 11th?
Yes.
Right. But I would also expect that we're going to.
So January 11th, January 25th,
Right.
and January 25th. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I may, and I realize I'm being super optimistic in this moment, but on January 25th, my expert's not available. Again, I realize I'm being super optimistic at this point.
Forget
but-
super optimistic. There are 3 experts being called. My recollection is by the objectors. Superly optimistic that we get to that point at this rate. But leaving that aside, there are 3 people being called. Mr. Tarantino has an expert, Mr. Gross has an expert, and you have an expert. If yours can't make it on the 25th and we get to that point, it will be incumbent on either Mr. Tarantino or Mr. Gross, or both, to have their experts present.
Thank you, I just wanted to,
Unless there's a problem, Mr. Tarantino, with yours.
I don't know.
Well, I suggest you find out, and if there's a problem, let us know.
Okay.
Somebody needs to have an expert present.
Like a form?
For all intents and purposes, gentlemen, everybody needs to have people who may have to testify potentially available unless there is rain, snow, sleet, or hail, or any other problematic situations.
And I'm just going to throw it out, what about remote?
What?
That any of their witnesses can get thrown up on the jumbo screen?
Nobody's coming remote. Nobody's coming remote. You're making us come, nobody's coming remote.
No, I'm not making it as a, I'm just trying to, no, I mean,
I'm just
definitely, but
I'm making that point.
I just-
Whatever you, by the way, Mr. Giannetti, whatever Mr. Cook can provide prior to the end of the year would be appreciated. If there's any additional, we'll take it by the 15th. But if he's going to testify on the 11th, some of it should be available.
I think the board has everything he's going to be testifying to.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
What was the date for the extension?
We'll give February 1st.
He's in a holiday mood.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, it's a motion to continue this application without further notice to January 11th, 2024 at 7 PM or soon thereafter as the matter may be heard, as well as Thursday, January 25th, 2024 at 7 PM or soon thereafter as the matter may be heard, with the understanding that Homestead 279 has precedence over, and an extension of time of decision to February 1, 2024.
so with that summary, may I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, thank you.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner? Yes. Mr. Scobo?
Yes.
Smith? Yes. Committeeman Chicarelli?
Yes.
Mayor Lapani?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair Sarachi?
Yes.
Which brings us back, Mr. Chairman, to Homestead 279 for formality, which is that will be scheduled without further notice for January 25th, 2024 at 7 PM, or soon thereafter as the matter may be heard, and that will have precedence over Homestead Road that evening.
Okay. May I have a motion?
Oh, go ahead, I'll make that motion.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner? Yes. Mr. Scobo?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Committeeman Chicarelli?
Abstain.
Mayor Lapani?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair Sarachi?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
And I think with that, Mr. Coyce, unless there's anything else?
I have nothing else.
Okay, so,
Make a motion to adjourn?
well, that's what I was going to say. I'm going to entertain a motion of
make a motion to
adjournment.
Mr. Julian going to make
And
that
Mr.
motion?
Julian, Vice Chair Julian, please take us home.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn for one final time for me.
I'll second that.
I second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
10:34.